So we'll go ahead and get started here. It's 6:32 and it is, January 12th, 2022. So we'll go ahead and convene the Centennial School Board of Directors meeting and call it to order. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for tonight. I don't see any errors or omissions that need to be corrected or anything that needs to be taken out of order. So barring any objections, we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Excellent. Director Solowski moved, Director Shields seconded. So we'll go ahead and move to a vote. If anybody has any objections, now is the time. All those in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All right, for the board secretary, I believe that was 6 votes in favor. We have one board member still out, so that explains the votes. So the agenda is adopted as presented. Item 2 on the agenda is introduction of guests. Superintendent Owens, do we have anybody there that you'd like to introduce?
No, there's nobody here as guests, but one thing that is on the introduction of guests, which is kind of an odd place for it, but it's historically been where it is the annual school board recognition. So I have a proclamation to read in appreciation of our school board, and hopefully those of you who requested dinner were able to get that. That's a small token of our appreciation. And as I said last week, during our board training, I really appreciate the structure of a school board in terms of the oversight and guidance it provides to a district with community members at the helm. And so I just want to offer that, since it's School Board Appreciation Month, just the structure in and of itself, but then also the individual board members that we have here. I've really appreciated, from established board members to those who are on the board this year for the first time. I've really appreciated the insight, guidance, and look forward to the power and potential that this group has as a collective. So I just wanted to offer that before I read the proclamation. So go ahead, sorry.
No, I was gonna say thank you for that, and dinner was yummy. It hit the spot.
And I'd also offered that Cassie Swenson put a social media out last week with regard to school board appreciation, and OSBA picked it up and put it on their daily newsletter. So some of you might have seen that too. So you got statewide recognition as well. So I'll go ahead and read this proclamation. Whereas school boards create a vision for what students should know and be able to do. Whereas school boards establish clear standards for student performance. Whereas school boards ensure that student assessments are tied to established standards. Whereas school boards are accountable to the community for operating schools that support student achievement. Whereas school boards align school district resources to ensure that students meet standards. Whereas school boards create a climate that supports the philosophy that all children can learn at high levels. Whereas school boards build collaborative relationships based on trust, teamwork, and shared accountability. And whereas school boards are committed to continuous education and training on issues related to student achievement. Now, therefore, we, the students, staff, teachers, and administration hereby declare our appreciation to the members of the Centennial District Governing Board and proclaim the month of January to be School Board Recognition Month. We urge all citizens to join us in recognizing the dedication and hard work of local school board members in preparing today's students for tomorrow's world. And that proclamation will be shared not only tonight, but then Pam Jordan has contacted the mayor's office, and Mayor Stovall intends to read that proclamation for the Centennial School Board at their upcoming meeting for Gresham. So that's an extra nice touch too.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for that, Superintendent Owens. That's we appreciate that. And although I am part of the board, I want to thank the rest of the school board for all the work you do, the hours you put in, and being such awesome people, making yourself available and putting in the work. All right, next item on the agenda is item 3. It's the approval of minutes. I think as most of the board members got hint of via the board secretary, the December 8th minutes, there was a bit of a debacle with the recording device. So we all had a chance to sort of input through OSBA's guidance. Their guidance was do the best you can. So I think I emailed some stuff and some other board members did as well. So we will cobble together what we have is what we have. And this stuff happens when you're working with technology. And so, but I mean, it's fairly complete. It's a pretty good representation of what we have. So I would like to just adopt it as drafted, unless anybody has anything last minute they wanted to add to it. And so I'm not hearing any additions to that. We can probably just do these together, the December 8th board meeting minutes, as well as our January 5th board training minutes, which are pretty sparse. It was a training session for the board. So do I have a motion to adopt both the December 8th board meeting minutes and the training minutes from the 5th of January? Don't be shy.
Sure,
Claudia, did you have a question?
Yeah,
Yes, I did.
Sorry, Claudia, I can't see everybody at one time. I apologize.
Okay, I did have, we definitely need to show that we had a vote on the one topic about, and I'm sorry, I reviewed this last week, and so I have lost it, but where we extended the authorization for purchasing. Renewal of emergency authorization for COVID-19 related purchases, Paul Southerton, Director of Business Operations. I think the minutes do have to reflect that we approved that authorization. So I don't want to adopt them as they are currently. We need to show that there was a vote and that we approved that. Don't we have to do that?
Typically with those, Director Shields, do you want to weigh on this from your previous experience?
Actually, yeah, I think we do have to have it reflected, and it would be just as easy for us to go back through and just go and take a vote if you wanted to this evening and just read it off and say, if you recall your vote from last meeting, confirm it so that the records could reflect.
Just make it as sort of an amendment.
Yes, yes. If we could do that, it would be as easy to do to amend the minutes for, as you read it, Claudia. The renewal, the board approves the renewal of emergency. All those in favor, aye. All those in favor, or no. That way we absolutely have a correct record of it. Something like, and I think Director Southerton, you might want to weigh in on this, but I know these things oftentimes have to be sent other places or part of our official records.
We do retain records of the signed resolutions in conjunction with the minutes. I'm happy if you want to give me a minute, I can try and pull up that resolution so you can have a copy in front of you before your vote.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
So then would we go ahead and approve the minutes as they are, because this new vote would be part of this week's minutes or of this meeting's minutes?
I think we could probably do it as an amendment. So approve the minutes with subsequent amendment, and then we would read the resolution, kind of retake the vote, so that way we have the video of our actual vote.
Okay,
but it would be presented as an amendment.
I think, Director Southerton, we had to approve it before the end of the year for the purchasing opportunities that would start January 1st, right? Was that? I thought that was the timing of the whole thing.
It was to renew. Great question, Director Andrews. It was just to renew the authorization in case we need it, which we all know based on this emerging variant, we're going to have additional needs and purchases. So it was a proactive measure to renew the previous resolution, which had expired. At this point in time, sorry to interrupt. At this point in time, we have not engaged that resolution. We've not needed to exceed our purchasing, authority or any competitive bid requirements. It's a proactive measure. So it wouldn't put us out of compliance at this point in time with anything we've done between now and December 8th. But thank you for looking out for us and raising that issue. I appreciate it.
Director Andrews, was there anything else on there that you had caught? Or any other board
Well,
member?
I just suggested to Pam that all she do is amend the minutes to say where she didn't know who had made or seconded the motion, to just say that the motion was made and seconded, so that it is very clear that it was moved and it was seconded, because it was. I
Yeah.
mean, all the things that we voted on. And so I guess I would like to see that change in the minutes for all of the votes that just have blanks there, because I don't remember when I moved for something or seconded, and I'm assuming others don't either. And so filling in the blanks, I don't think is something we want to try to do. I don't think that's an exercise. And I think it's valid to just say the agenda item was moved and seconded and then went on for a vote.
And I do have your notes, and I will do that. I didn't get around to doing that before the meeting started, but I will fix it, Claudia.
Well, but I didn't think you were going to fix it beforehand anyway, Pam. I was pretty sure that we would see this version and go over these changes.
Okay.
All right, but as far as specific motions that we needed to get to, other than the extension of the resolution that Director Southerton's going to pull up for us, you didn't catch anything else?
I didn't see anything else that we voted on that didn't reflect that in the minutes.
Yeah, I didn't either. Any other board members have anything they'd like to amend on this? So we'll just attach it to the rest of this amendment.
On consideration offers for the sale of the 174th property, we could just then eliminate those lines with the name blank. Is that, I believe, what I heard Claudia say? Right? We're just deleting director blank, made a motion, and director, but was just all those places. It was moved and seconded.
Yes.
I have it now. Okay, I got it. I was just wanting to make sure I was following it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Do you have that yet, Director Southerton?
I do, Chair Curry. I just wasn't sure if you wanted it now or during old business, if we were going to take another vote. I can pull it up now if that's works for you.
Yeah, if you can just throw up, do you have screen sharing ability? If you
I
can
do.
just put up, just so that when we make the motion for the amendment, we can get the name, we can identify it clear there. That's perfect. All right. So I believe we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the following amendment. We are going to amend the minutes for December 8th to reflect the vote for a resolution for the board to extend the emergency procurement authorization. That resolution was also in the December 8th meeting. So we'll go ahead and do that. This amendment will also reflect that the minutes for December 8th will show votes as motioned and seconded. They will not identify individual board members who have made those for the reasons we've previously discussed. With those amendments, is everyone prepared to move to a vote? Scrolling through here. Not hearing any objections. So let's go ahead and move to a vote to approve the December 8th minutes with the previous amendments. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think that was unanimous. Is that correct? Flipping through here. I believe that was a unanimous vote for the board secretary.
Okay.
Director Andrews, is this where you wanted to go ahead and just pull that vote again for the resolution? Just to be on the safe side?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So what we'll do now real quick is we'll go ahead and vote again to approve the resolution for the emergency procurement authorization, just because there was a technical glitch during the previous vote. So all those in favor, do I need a motion actually to go ahead and do this, just to be,
So
Go ahead.
moved.
do we have a second?
Second.
Excellent. So the motion to revote on this resolution for the emergency procurement authorization has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? Just need to ask. Not hearing any discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of approving this resolution, say aye.
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 For the board secretary, I believe that was a unanimous vote from all 7 board members. So we've got our bases covered on that. All right, moving on to the second minutes. There it was the January 5th board training minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the January 5th board training minutes. Anybody want to chat about that? Not hearing any, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor to approve the January 5th board meeting minutes, say aye.
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 Excellent. By my count, that was also a unanimous vote for the board secretary.
His
Go ahead.
microphone is not on, so I'm not sure if we're hearing her votes. Hi, Erica.
Oh, I said aye. Aye.
Okay, got it. Now I hear you.
Awesome. All right, so approval of minutes are out of the way. Thanks so much, Director Southerton and Director Andrews for catching that and getting us sorted out on that. We do want to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. Public forum, there were a couple comments that came in. I think the board's aware of the one-click ones that came in. We're choosing not to respond to those because it essentially equates to spam when everybody writes the same thing through one of those robot apps. There are a few other ones that came up. We have another concern. It's a little outdated because we've already moved on this issue for the wrestling team, so I don't think we'll revisit that. There was a bullying issue that was written by a parent. Superintendent Owens is aware of that, and he is going to follow up with his middle school staff to handle that. That's not a board issue that we would jump into, but I did want to let this parent know that we did receive the email, and Superintendent Owens is following up with that. Just so you're aware that if you're watching, we did receive that. We have another email here regarding the SRO program. I wanted this community member to be aware that our SRO and his lieutenant has actually reached out to the board and invited us to sit in on a security meeting, which we will be doing on the 25th of January. So it'll give the chance the board to learn more about the SRO program and get some information for us. And so also have a chance to meet our SRO and his lieutenant. So thank you for that email. And the board is definitely following up with that with taking some meetings with the SRO and the Gresham Police Department. We have some busing issues. A couple of these emails were busing issues. That again is not an area that the board reaches down into. That's a superintendent issue. Superintendent Owens is aware of both of these emails with regard to busing. These are both elementary school kids. And so I wanted both of these parents to be aware that we received those emails, and Superintendent Owens is going to follow up with Director Southerton, and Director Southerton will reach out to these families to speak with them and try to help resolve their issues. We did receive an email regarding spectators in sports. I think our spectator sports policy was pretty clear. This particular email had mentioned testing. We're not requiring testing at this time. I believe social distancing and limiting guests is our policy. So I would encourage this parent to reach out to the district office if they have concerns about what exactly the spectator policy is. And then Superintendent Owens' staff can better inform them of what we're expecting. And that is just about it for the public comment. Any board members want to comment on any of that before we move on? Hearing no comments, we're moving on to item 5, reports. I'll turn this over to Superintendent Owens to kick us off.
Great. So we've got quite a bit, and as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of COVID-related topics that we'll want the board to engage in. Nevertheless, I wanted to start this evening's report with a few non-COVID related topics to balance things out a little bit. Because once I think we start talking about Omicron, we'll be here in that stage for a while. So first, we'll talk about the Comprehensive Boundary Review Open House. Last evening, we had our Comprehensive Boundary Review Open House. Because of the increase in COVID-19 spread in the community, it was prudent to transform to an in-person format, from an in-person format to a virtual one. Between the two sessions, there were 18 participants who were provided an overview of the committee consensus scenario number 2 and had a chance to ask questions and provide feedback directly to the committee members. There were 3 languages represented at the open house: Spanish, Burmese, and Arabic. And I understand that Chief Swenson and Kent from Flow Analytics will be meeting with a parent later this week with a Somali interpreter as well. Is that correct, Director Southerton? Cassie isn't able to, oh, there she is, right on time.
Yep.
Right on time. Can you speak to the other languages that are also being incorporated?
Yeah, so we are meeting with a Somali parent tomorrow, and we're also scheduling a session with a Vietnamese parent as well. So,
thank you for that.
mhm.
As was the case with the first open house, in order to broaden participation, we're offering 2 options for our parents, staff, and residents of the community to participate. In addition to the virtual open house that was just held, there's also an asynchronous option, which involves participants watching a video and completing a feedback form. The video provides an overview of the boundary review process and the boundary map scenario. The video is currently posted on the district website and will remain available until this Sunday, January 16th, 2022. Following the open house feedback, we're getting pretty close here. Following the open house feedback, the Boundary Review Committee has one more meeting scheduled this upcoming Tuesday, January 18th. At this meeting, the committee will incorporate applicable feedback from the open house sessions and then finalize their recommendation to me. From there, I will review the recommendation and prepare it for board consideration at the February 23rd, 2022 meeting. I will also incorporate into this recommendation a transition plan, which we will be discussing in an upcoming report this evening. And I'll let Director Shields and Harden, who are liaisons to this process, share any insights they might have about the process of the open house.
I'll start. I sat in on the open house last night. I thought it went well, the presentation by Flow Analytics. I think they did a pretty good job providing the information. It was a lot of information if this was the first time you were sitting down and understanding what's going on. So I would encourage folks to reach out, provide feedback to, by all means, we want the general public to be part of the process. We want our families to be part of it. So I encourage everyone to reach out to the committee and to the group and just to anyone. If you have questions, concerns, feedback, because it affects all of us. And as much as I would have liked an in-person format, I think all of us would have. But at the same time, it's, currently we're just not at that stage or at that, the risk wasn't worth the reward. That's what I have.
Thank you, Jess. It was like you got it all. It was covered. It's always good to be involved in these committees, though, and listen to our constituents and the types of questions that they have that sometimes we don't always think about. So it was an excellent session. Flow Analytics, again, just have been doing really well. Cassie as well, leading us through it. So appreciate all the effort. Get to the website, though, board members, and take an opportunity to really delve into. There's just so much information on the website now for boundary review, and I think that would be good for all of us to have that under our belt when we have the discussion in the coming month or so.
Great, thank you. And my understanding is that there are 25 completed feedback forms for this open house round between the virtual and the asynchronous. So we'll keep collecting those this week and review them next Tuesday at the final meeting that we have with the committee. And so yesterday evening was a busy evening. Also last evening, Chair Curry, Vice Chair Fuller, and I participated in a regional school board equity team meeting hosted by MESD. These meetings are aligned with the Equity Plan 2020 the team previously developed, which aims to establish proposed timelines, accountability, and performance measures for a handful of action areas. I plan to share this plan with the board in my regular weekly communications so that you can develop a further understanding of the work of the countywide team. Due to board and superintendent turnover, there was a substantial amount of new members. So much of the meeting was spent on getting to know one another and establishing a sense of the current status of the group's collaboration. I'll defer to Chair Curry and Vice Chair Fuller for any additional comments that they might like to provide.
Vice Chair Fuller.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be on this team, this regional team, to talk about these very important issues. And I really felt like it was a really nice, we laid a nice, solid foundation yesterday. I really do. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, I would second that. So our speaker was Dr. Johnny Lake, who gave us an excellent presentation. This is what he does. And it was, just for those, the regional equity team is designed to help us as superintendents, as board members specifically, to reach out and support each other in trying to just basically get better dialogue around this issue of equity. So we got off to a great start, identified some great language. This is tough stuff to talk about. We had, we had African-American participants, we had Latino, Asian, some Caucasian participants. So it was across the board, and those kinds of discussions can oftentimes be uncomfortable. And Dr. Lake did an excellent job of making everybody feel comfortable and talking about stuff that we sometimes don't want to talk about. So moving forward, we'll meet again in a couple months, and then I look forward to Superintendent Owens kind of handing out and getting you guys briefed, because I would like to transfer some of that information to actionable steps for our board.
Great. Thanks, Chair Curry. Starting in December, our cabinet has spent time visiting with our operations departments to get a better sense of the work that they're doing, the successes that they're experiencing, and the challenges that they're running up against. So far, our cabinet has had the opportunity to meet with our technology, our transportation, and our maintenance departments, each in separate meetings. We have a meeting with our dining services department set up for later this month, but we'll likely need to look at rescheduling this given the transition to remote meetings within the district. So hats off to Director Southerton. He oversees our district operations, and that was his idea to have these listening forums with the intention that we would revisit these every 6 months or so to continue our employee engagement. Director Southerton, at the risk of putting you on the spot, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Thank you, Superintendent Owens. Just my, extreme gratitude for our support services staff. They work tirelessly every day to support our students. Our bus drivers are the first folks that a lot of our students see from the district every day, and the last one before they go home. Dining services, supporting food insecurity and nourishment for our students. IT, making sure everything's working, and we know how heavily IT is dependent on nowadays. Facilities and keeping the building safe and the lights on. Our support services department team, like all our others around the district, are just top notch, and have a deep gratitude for them and their participation in this listening session, their honesty, what's working, what's not working, where they need help, the struggles and the challenges they've gone through over the last year and a half through the pandemic, and just the collaboration, cooperation. Just continue to be inspired and impressed with the caliber of folks around the district, in our district, and our community partners, the people that serve on the boundary committee as well. Just top-notch folks all around. So just a sense of gratitude and appreciation.
Thanks. And one thing I'll add to that is that Director Southerton put together a format where, as the issues were raised by the operation department staff members, we're putting those together in a Google Doc, basically, where those staff members can log on and see the status of some of the concerns that they raised, so that they can understand that not only did they get to voice a concern, but they also can see a status update about how that concern is being addressed, so that they know that not only were they listened to, but there's action being taken based on some of the obstacles that they're facing. So I think that'll be a helpful format. Finally, before we dive into COVID here, I'll talk about the annual legislative summit, which is hosted by MESD. It's scheduled for tomorrow, Thursday, January 13th. Chair Curry and I will be representing Centennial in this virtual summit. At the summit, districts will be meeting with legislators to speak on a variety of topics, including board training, workforce shortages, the Ready Schools Safe Learners Resiliency Framework, and enrollment and future funding concerns. Chair Curry and I will be speaking to the student mental health challenges and responses. And after hearing from districts, legislators will share their thoughts, questions, and information about legislative proposals that they might be bringing forward. And Chair Curry, I don't expect you to have anything to add, but don't want to leave the topic in case you do.
Nope, I think that about sums it up.
Great. So I'm going to transition us to a PowerPoint that our cabinet has developed, because you will recall I shared with the board, and I don't always share the emails that we send to our staff, but I thought that this was an important one for the board to see, so that you could see in real time the communication that we're providing to our educators to inform them on the current state of affairs and what we're doing as a district to help prepare for contingencies given the climate and environment we're in with COVID. And so I reference that email because I think it provides a helpful kind of entry point here in terms of the presentation that we'll share with you in this PowerPoint. One element of that communication outlined some criteria that we are using as a district in terms of determining our ability to be operational as a school district going forward. Before I share that PowerPoint, I just wanted to relate that in the last day, I've had quite a few meetings with various constituent groups. Yesterday morning, I had a meeting with other superintendents in Multnomah County and also Multnomah County Public Health. And that was facilitated through Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafori's office. And at that meeting, it was helpful for superintendents to hear from public health authorities about their take on the current status with Omicron and the significant spike that we're seeing here recently. And so one thing that I want to offer as a frame as we have this discussion tonight is that when we're looking at our operational ability as a school district as it pertains to, and I say this knowing that you've heard the news with various districts in various states of potential closure and other things, and we'll talk about some of the conversations that I've had with others around what's happening regionally. But what I'll offer as a frame is that as we're thinking about our ability to maintain operations, it really kind of breaks down into two buckets. One bucket would be public health and safety, and the other bucket would be operational. And so from the public health and safety perspective, as it pertains to the meeting that I referenced yesterday with Multnomah County Public Health, it really has to do with public health's recommendations around whether they believe that schools are a safe place for students and staff to be operating in. A comparison point might be if you had an outbreak of norovirus. We have those in schools from time to time. I'd say they happen, on a fairly regular, maybe not annually, but every couple of years, there's at least one of our schools, that gets a bug of norovirus. And in those cases, we are in communication. The principal's talking with the school nurse, who's talking with Multnomah County Public Health, monitoring attendance data, seeing what kind of outbreaks we have within the school, and seeing if that's a situation where we might need to close down and clean for a day or two and just kind of reset the environment. As it pertains, I offer that to say, as it pertains to public health's perception of schools in the COVID environment, their perception and what they're relaying to us and what we know with the mitigation strategies that we'll talk about here in this PowerPoint is with all of the layered mitigation protocols that are in place and the structured environment with which kids operate, schools are relatively more safe place for students to be rather than being at home. So from a public health perspective, they're not recommending schools to shut down. In fact, they're recommending schools stay operable as long as they're able to do so, knowing that we have those layered mitigation strategies in place. Now, that's not to say if there wasn't an outbreak or something of that sort that we wouldn't be looking at that, similar to the norovirus example that I just gave you. But what I'll also say is that keeping schools open is a public health objective for local and statewide public health on a whole, separate from COVID. So that's a public health strategy into and of itself. So as I relate kind of the two buckets that I said, the first one being public health, from a public health perspective, there's not a drive to close schools. In fact, it's the opposite. So I just wanted to frame that. The second piece I'll say is the operational thing is what you're hearing when you're hearing what's on the news. And that is the impacts of the widespread COVID outbreak that we're experiencing now. And so that's when we go through this PowerPoint, we'll touch on the layered mitigation measures that we're implementing as a district and across schools across the state and so forth. But we're really going to narrow in on some of the operational impacts that we're having as a district, because that's where we're getting tripped up is with, and I don't want to steal the thunder of the presentation, but that's where we're getting tripped up in terms of students and staff needing to quarantine, staffing shortages, operational shortages, all of that stuff. So when you're hearing about schools closing, it isn't because necessarily there's outbreaks. I mean, that may be happening, but that's not normally what's happening, is that they're having operational issues that are causing schools not to be able to continue to function for a variety of reasons. So with that queued up here, and I'll welcome any questions that you might have or things that you may want to interject as we go through, but I just wanted to offer that piece as I queue this up. Will you give me a thumb up if that is, you can see that? Okay, thank you. So I'll kick it over to Denise to tell us a little bit about the layered health and safety measures that we have in place.
Good evening, everyone. This slide should look familiar. We've shared it with you several times. And as you can see, public health is really emphasizing that the more of these measures that we have in place, the slower that we can we can limit the spread of COVID across settings. And I think Superintendent Owens highlighted the fact that in Multnomah County and with Oregon Public Health, they continue to share the thought that within the school system, because it is a controlled environment, that many of these mitigations we can control, where in other settings they cannot. They also are putting a big emphasis on COVID-19 vaccinations, including booster shots for those who are eligible. That's a huge piece that they're working to encourage. And the stronger and the higher the vaccination rates, the stronger and the slower the spread could be. Pieces that I do want to highlight on here right now is that regular COVID-19 testing is one of the mitigation measures, as many people in our community are encountering right now, trying to find a test, trying to get in to take a test. There are some real difficulties with that. And we had a plan to start test to stay. And with everything, with the numbers that have incurred just within the last 2 weeks, we had to put that on pause because of the lift that it would be. And so that is one of the mitigation measures that we are working with some organizations and with some new guidance that's coming out to see, will that still be something that's required of schools? How does that fit into schools? I'm having conversations with an organization to figure out if they can stand up some regular testing sites for us, because it is a huge need in our community. Another piece that I want to highlight is isolation and quarantine. These have been strategies that we've been using throughout the fall, and we had really thorough processes in place to determine who had been exposed, who was considered a close contact, who would need to quarantine for a set of time. And as you're going to see with some data here in a few more slides, is the sheer volume of numbers that we are trying to contact trace for to determine who's been exposed is hampering us to do as good a job as we could with this mitigation measure. So quarantine is one that with the MESD and the health department, they have a huge backlog of cases that they're getting to inform us, and then for us to conduct and support that piece. So that is a piece that we know is important. Everybody is trying in the buildings, and in many of our buildings right now, that's all some of the building staff are doing, is working through contact tracing to determine who does need to isolate or quarantine. And then we continue to encourage all of the other pieces. Cleaning is something that we're encouraging to do. Whenever we get updates, we're sharing that. The spacing and distancing and continuing to wear masks is a high priority. And visual screenings are occurring when kids are coming off the bus and coming into buildings. And then thorough screenings are occurring if students are showing any symptoms during the day as well.
May I ask a question, Denise? This is Claudia.
Sure. Does that work? Yeah.
On that last slide, you didn't say anything about the cohorting.
Yes. Thank you.
And I'm wondering, last spring, cohorting, almost everything was focused around cohorting. And there's been very little involvement, at least from what I know about cohorting now. So is that still one of the mitigation measures that we are employing?
Yes. So cohorting looks different, like you had said, than it did last year. So ways that cohorting shows up is class. Anytime students are together for a set period of time, that's considered a cohort. So students riding on the bus, that's considered a cohort. Students in a third grade class is a cohort. Students in their integrated math class at the high school, those are considered cohorts. So that's a stable group that's together for a period of time. And those are the identified groups when we have a positive individual that we need to contact trace with. And so we're not contact tracing with the whole entire school. It's narrowed to who are the individuals considered to be in that stable cohort. And then from there, we're looking at the spacing requirements for that specific class or that specific activity.
All right, thank you.
You bet. And then in athletics, they are also trying to do some cohorting. Some of the teams have different groups of students that practice together specifically so that then they can kind of keep track of which students were spending more time together.
Great question. Thank you. So in the Friday communication that I referenced as I opened up today, there were criteria that we had outlined in terms of what we're reviewing on a daily basis to determine our ability to keep individual schools and classrooms open for our students. And so these are criteria that we've laid out, and basically what you'll see in subsequent slides to this one is each of these bullet points kind of teased out so that you can see how we're evaluating that particular metric, if that makes sense. And what I'd say, in addition to these components that you see here is, I think people look for some hard and fast decision rules and say, oh, well, if this, then this. If this happens, then we're going to close school. If I've heard some districts say if we're at 20 to 25% of staffing vacancies, then that's going to equal a closure. And I think our approach needs to be more nuanced and customized to the environment because of a variety of factors that we'll touch on. But I would not say decision points. I would say consider action points. Those are kind of the flags that raise that we say, okay, there's a problem here. We need to dig in deeper. We need to contact the principal, see what's going on, see where we can deploy resources. And our ability, because right now we're in a very unsustainable method of deploying any resource that we have to school sites to help them stay operable. That's what we're doing is we're evaluating these different criteria is can we apply an intervention resource to be able to continue operations in that spot. I'll let Director Wright speak, or no, this is Director Southerton's slide, student attendance he's been monitoring.
Thank you, Superintendent Owens. So we continue to monitor the student attendance across the district in every school. As you can imagine, it varies by school to school. And we're seeing attendance rates this week of between 65 and 92%, 65 being the lowest at one of our elementary schools and 92% the highest at our middle school this week. Based on our overall enrollment numbers, that equates to absences of roughly 700 to 950 students every day across the district. Currently is what we're seeing.
And so basically the way that those attendance patterns break down, and anyone correct me if I'm off base here, but basically what we're seeing is students who are sick, students who are out on quarantine, and then students whose families have chosen with their feet not to come to school because they don't perceive it to be a safe environment for their kid during this wave. And so that's one of the things that's really weighing on myself, our cabinet members, and our educators throughout the system is, we go through and do walkthroughs through schools. There's great routine structures and learning happening, but then you walk into a classroom and see 12 to 16 kids and think to yourself, there's great things happening. Too bad a lot of the kids aren't here to access and receive this good instruction that's happening. So that's one of the things that's weighing on us, is that there's not ideal options for the 1 out of 6 students roughly in these percentages here that are not attending on a daily basis.
So these next couple of,
Pardon me. Do you want me to hold our questions?
Interject as we go through, please.
Then my question on the previous slide would be, daily attendance has impact on budget. Are we going to have these, is this something that we're going to be talking with the legislators about? Because, this is money as well as lost opportunities for our students. And so just like to know, and maybe this is something to discuss later, and maybe for sure it's something to discuss with Budget Committee, the impact of this kind of absenteeism.
I'll defer to Director Southerton. He might have some insight there. I'm not sure if there's any hold harmless provisions that they're considering.
Great questions. Currently, the 10-day drop has been reinstated this year. So if we do have students that are not in attendance for 10 days, then we have to drop them and they have to re-enroll. I imagine, given the spike in cases, though, that there will be something done soon. We have a meeting next week with the Multnomah County business managers, and this will be a topic of conversation. At this point in time, it is our intent to do everything we possibly can to keep our students connected to the district. And so we will absolutely keep them enrolled as long as we possibly can with their attendance out for these kinds of reasons. Does that help to answer your question, Director Shields? Thank you.
and can I add a caveat to further speak to what Paul had said? For students who are out on quarantine, we do have quarantine codes. So those students aren't being dropped because of that very reason, if they have to be out on quarantine. So they're still a part of our student body. They're not have to re-enroll if they've been out specifically because of a quarantine.
Director Wright, go ahead.
Oh yeah. The next couple of slides, we're going to take a big angle view of Multnomah County. We're going to take a broad view of district numbers, and then we're going to go into some finite numbers for per buildings. And on this first slide, you can see this is Multnomah County specifically. You can look at, these are the overall cases across the county. And this one goes up until January 9th. And so within the next couple of days, they'll be updating this, and you can see the spike was starting, and I'm surprised that 1.9 downfall, but I think when they repopulate it, we will see that continue to go. So you can see what's occurring specifically in Multnomah County for positive cases. And then with this, something good to recognize in the 97236 zip code, which is one of our primary zip codes, cases as of January 5th were up by 280 cases. And we continue to have a lower vaccination rate. We just have 50% basically of our individuals living in this community vaccinated. And then as of January 5th for the zip code 97233, cases were up by 185. So we can see where Multnomah County is, and we can also see those case rates specifically in our 2 primary zip codes as well. And then across Multnomah County, there have been, as of the 2nd of January, there were over 1,000 cases per 100,000 residents, and the test positivity rate is almost 22%. The next couple slides are Centennial specific. And so each week, the Multnomah County Education Service District is calculating submissions. So each time we are informed about a COVID-19 case, there's a specific form that buildings are filling out. It's called the SCIF. It's the school COVID information form. And within that, we're indicating whether an individual is a close contact or a positive test. And so you can see, as you know, from November, things were kind of trucking along. They were at pretty reasonable cases. And then coming back as of the data for last week, you can see that we had, and my glasses aren't on, we had 86 positive student records that were confirmed at that point, and then 82 positive records for students that were close contacts. And one thing, a caveat for the data for this, and then when we get additional data the next couple of weeks, is that there is a backlog in getting this data to this point. So it's very reasonable that these numbers could be much more significantly higher, because there's many steps that have to happen before this is input. And so part of it is students call out sick, they might email their teacher that they have a positive case, and then our school nurses have to contact families to be able to get additional information before this goes in. That's one way that it happens. We also can put information in through a symptom tracker. So, but all of those are taking human time and human hours. And so just a caveat that there probably are more positive cases, which we'll see more of them when we get our updated data next week. And then the next slide is looking at staff data. So very similar information, and you can see staff cases as well. And so this was as of 1/9. So it's looking at the data primarily from last week. The same thing holds true with this. The information is input by the staff member's supervisor. So this data is closer to real time. Something that may not be reflected in this is if a staff member initially might have been a close contact, and then while they were a close contact and they were tested, they became positive. Prior to the last couple of weeks, the turnaround to get that updated and to have the staff member show as a positive case in that database was occurring. And again, because of the significant numbers that the county and the ESD are working through, that information isn't going through as quickly either. All right, this chart has a lot of information. So those 2 reports that were on the previous 2 slides, these are basically the breakdowns from all that information. And so you can see, and this information is basically the last week and a half. And so the reason why I captured the last week and a half is because students and staff who had tested positive during this time are in quarantine right now as well. And so wanting to capture what we're feeling and seeing in buildings. And so I'll just kind of read it a couple ways so that it makes sense. So we'll take Butler Creek at the top there. So there were 22 entries for students into the SCIF, the student information form. 23 of the students who were entered were close contacts. So they were either living with a member in their home that was positive, or they had a friend that was positive. And then there were 9 students that were positive as of today at 6:30 this morning. And this is, again, students who are entered into the SCIF. There are definitely lots of families who've been calling in and letting the school know. And again, those are, as soon as the nurse is able to follow up with them and get them entered, they go into that. And so The same information is true for the adult information. So for Butler Creek, as of 6:30 this morning, there were 6 adult entries over the last week and a half. 3 staff were close contacts, and then 3 staff were positive at that time. And so then you can see an overall total for Butler Creek. You can see a variation across our buildings, and looking at our high school and our middle school, it would make sense that we would have high numbers in both of those places given the number of students. But things I do want to draw your attention to is as of this morning, we had 108 individuals who have tested positive starting right before school started through this morning, and 143 of those cases were students. 37 of those cases were staff. When I looked at the data today at 5:50 this afternoon, we'd had an additional 46 entries included into that. 16 more individuals have tested positive, with 5 of those being staff members. And again, I do want to say that we know that there is a backlog of data trying to get entered. So while these numbers are astonishingly high compared to when we've been previously in the school year, they're still not representing all of the students and staff who've been reporting that they have tested positive. And so with this, oops, I'll go back, James, I'm still. In addition to this, these numbers do represent staff that have to quarantine and students that have to quarantine. So with the 37 positive staff cases that are here, plus the 5 that were reported just throughout the day, those are all individuals who are actively quarantining. And then we have some other staff who are having to quarantine because they've been exposed, considered exposed last week or this week, either outside in the community or on site. When individuals are exposed and having to quarantine, that is either because they themselves are not fully vaccinated or because they have become symptomatic after the exposure. So we approximately have probably about 10 staff that are in that situation. Students quarantine right now, and again, this one's really, really rough because we're spending time trying to figure out who's positive so we can have those exposures identified so we can have students stay home and quarantine. We have not been able to input all of the data, but we have approximately 219 students on our district quarantine list. So that includes some of the students, that 143 students, but not all of them have been transferred over to that. We also have many students that have been listed as close contacts that are here in that line where there's 116. Many of those students are having to quarantine because they themselves were not fully vaccinated. And so they would have to quarantine as well. We do have many students within the last week and a half that have been exposed and are in quarantine. And those of us who are working on some of the behind the scenes part, as well as trying to do the upfront part with this, are moving that information over. And then there are students who have been exposed because we have so many cases, as you had seen, with having 180 individuals who have tested positive. Not every identified positive case has been able to be contact traced. So there are more individuals who've been exposed and should be in quarantine, and we have not been able to inform them or their families yet. And that was a lot of data. Happy to answer any questions.
Denise, this is Rose Salowski. I have a question.
You bet.
When you're talking about the delays in reporting that's happening, do you have an idea of how many are just going unreported? Are there families who are just calling in sick or just not calling at all? And what percentage of the absences is that? And do we feel like, is there, I don't know, I mean, I understand where we're at with staffing, and so we can't follow up on all of those, but I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so part of the process for reporting actually has 2 steps. And so before we get individuals into the school COVID information form, there is something called a symptom tracker. And so if students develop symptoms while they're at school, or if they call in sick, that information goes into the symptom tracker, and then either the school secretaries or the school nurses are calling home and say, you called your kid out sick today, or you emailed your teacher that they would be home sick. And so that's where building staff are finding out about a lot of students. And some families, because multiple members have COVID right now and are sick, they're not necessarily able to follow back up and confirm that, yes, this is COVID. We have, I mean, the teachers who are on here and throughout our district have such amazing relationships with families, and families are typically informing parents if they're sick or if they have COVID, and then our staff are getting that to our buildings as quick as possible. But to put this in perspective, a couple days ago, it was probably last Thursday or Friday, there were over 600 of those entries across Multnomah County. And so that is, you know, our nurse friends and consultants trying to support that. And so we had a really strong process in place, and buildings really had it down and, okay, let's do this. And so we're much further along in trying to access and be ready to inform that the MESD can keep up with us. And then we're still really behind on the ones that we need to go through forward. So we've had multiple incidences where families are calling and sharing that, you know, many people are out. And if a family calls one school and says, my child is positive and their siblings are, then there's communication as often as possible going to the other building. So our nurses will call the middle school and say, hey, I just got 3 siblings, one's at your school, one's at the high school. So those systems of communication are trying to be as tight as possible too.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Denise.
Yeah, you bet.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
With such a large jump in numbers, has there been any pattern? Do you track it at the class or cohort or sport level? And have we seen any huge jumps in any of those?
So I would say yes, and we are monitoring kind of which schools, and when you can look at that previous one, where it's happening with schools. We are at a very high level able to see where there's a couple connections. So an example, there were 3 positive cases on one of our school buses. And so those were kind of succinctly. And so one group of students was quarantined, you know, that were considered close contact. There was another positive case. And by the 3rd, it was like, all right, we just need to quarantine that whole bus. That's too much of a coincidence. But prior to winter break, and when the numbers were lower, when we would start to see clusters, we have had multiple meetings with the county health department and with the MESD to share, here's a building, here's a couple different cases. We need you to look at all the data too, to see what connections you're seeing with onset dates, as well as when individuals tested positive and who might have been identified. And so previously they've been able to help us really look at that thoroughly. But aside from kind of those big angles, we've been looking at that. There's very few positive cases right now connected to sports. We've had two situations just within this week, just connected to, but that's just like two teams. And it's not necessarily connected with the team. It just happens to be there's individuals who play on the teams or work with the teams. It does not mean that it's the origin is with the team. There's just those connections. And we do have a couple places that we've noticed, you know, 1 or 2 individuals in a class have tested positive, and their time might be very close to that. And so we're sharing that with the MESD and the health department. But again, because of their backlog, they're not going to be able to help us explore too deeply. So that's part of our concern with being able to contact trace quickly so that we can have the students who've been exposed out so that we can continue to mitigate and keep the spread as minimal as possible. And the community spread is so rampant that each time we have conversations with the MESD and the county, they said it's really hard right now to kind of identify some of the origins because it is so pervasive in the community.
I'm going to go ahead and defer to Dr. Katsuda, who is going to talk to us about staff attendance patterns and support, and specifically around absences, substitute coverage, and staffing support.
Thank you. So I have 4 slides of information for you all, and I wanted to, as it's loading here, I wanted to start by highlighting some important context. As has been reported and shared with you in previous board meetings, our district and districts across the state and the country have been experiencing staffing shortages this year. And as we've also shared, we've employed a variety of recruitment strategies to address those shortages with some pockets of success, but not to the extent needed to address the rate of staff leaving the district related to COVID-related stressors, right? So prior to this latest surge that we're examining tonight, and related absences, the district was short-staffed, right? So that's important context to take into consideration as we talk about the absences that you're going to be absence rates you're going to be looking at in a second, because these are the stressors on top of a district that already has staffing stressors in place, right? All right, so that first slide. All right, so the absences reflected here are primarily a result of quarantining, isolation, and COVID-related absences for staff, like for teachers who are parents needing to stay home with their child who is quarantined. We have a number of those cases. The number and proportion of absences within schools has created ongoing increasing stress on staff who are not absent and are stepping in to support instruction and the functioning of schools. So you see this data reflects a slight decline in the number of total staff across these 3 days of this school week, and the proportion of licensed and classified absences that make up that total. So Monday, go ahead, James. I was going to say Monday we had close to 120 total staff absences, and about half and half licensed classified, and it has slightly decreased, but we're still up to 86, which if you were to think about data in the long term and look at trends going from 127 or 120 or less than 120 to 86, might not be considered a significant decline. We see it as a decline over 3 days. We'll be examining it further, and we hope to see it further decline. But in the long run, some statisticians might consider this a flat line, depending on the perspective and the context, right? So, James?
What I was going to add in terms of context here is that the scale, you see the January 10th date up to almost 120 in normal circumstances. So take COVID away, let's go back in time a couple of years. Normal circumstances, a heavy absence day across our staff is 75 and above. Mm-hmm. Once you start to creep above 80 and so on, you start to see sub-rate failures where you're just not having positions covered. So that's normal circumstance. Now, as Tasha pointed out, we're having staffing issues. And then as you can imagine, substitutes aren't jumping at the opportunity to go classroom to classroom to be in classrooms with, that may have COVID in them. And so we're seeing people not pick up jobs, subs not being available. In my email to the board on Friday night, I indicated that Friday's fill rate was 37%, which is atrocious in terms of substitute fill rate. A bad fill rate day in normal circumstances is 80%. That's when you start feeling it. So a 37% fill rate means that most of the vacancies that exist in the district are not being covered by a substitute and are either being filled by other internal staff or just simply uncovered. And so, when you look at it, you apply a 37% fill rate to 120 absences, that's where the problem starts showing up, is that you're just having, we have a workforce of roughly 700. So 1 in 7 of our staff is out, give or take, and we're just not capable of filling that position. And when the bulk of what you do as an organization is work with students, if students aren't being supervised, let alone instructed, you have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in juxtaposition with the data that Denise, or that we talked about earlier in regards to student absences even if in a building the student absence rate is proportionate to the staff absent rate, there are still specific functions of the school that rely on specific people who are trained for those specific positions. And when they are out, the amount of stress on a school building is significant, right? I'll also say just another anecdote, part of the process we've been engaging in to support buildings is as we're monitoring the data, we have our own internal district level dashboard that our team looks at to help us make decisions that informs decision making. I've been, as a step of that, we were reaching out to principals to get context of what it feels like on the ground, the coverage they see they have in place based on the staff they have in the building internally, and then what we can do at the district level and where we should plug in the staff we have available. And I heard from a principal today that even the subs they had in place for teachers who committed to long-term sub jobs were starting to feel the pressure and anxious. And after committing for long-term sub jobs are now declining long-term sub jobs. So the subs for subs, that's going to be very difficult. That is a very difficult position that we're in. So I don't know that there's such a subsystem for subs, but that's something that's coming up in addition to all of this. So just a little bit of just an anecdote there. So this slide represents, again, all the data you'll see. It's just for the last 3 days as we've been capturing the data and had the bandwidth to put it into visuals for you. These last 3 school days show a decline in the total number of licensed staff absent. Slight decline, again, is relative to positions in the building, the number of students in the building, the level of, stress staff, et cetera. But it also shows the proportion of licensed staff positions that are successfully filled, unfilled, and positions that we do not need to fill. That's another factor. And I think sometimes people say, well, oh, great, we don't need to fill that position. That's a position we don't need to worry about. Well, one way to address that particular line of thinking is if you had a counselor absent. That's a position that we do not necessarily fill with a sub. That the services that counselor provides to students around mental, social, and emotional well-being, and the supports that students are needing right now, and therefore will not have when a counselor is out and when we can't fill that counseling position, it again adds another layer of stress on top of need, right? And the teachers are really counting on each other and staff in positions like the counseling position for those wraparound services and supports. So it's deceiving when you see unfilled to think that oh, great, that's just a proportion of staffing that we don't really have to worry about, right? This shows support staff, same kind of data, filled, unfilled, and no need to fill absences. Again, considering it's just 3 days, it's a relatively flat trend line and significantly and proportionately high number of classified or support staff absent.
And you'll notice, obviously, the unfilled rate is significantly higher when we're looking at classified positions. Those positions rarely, relatively speaking, don't get picked up as much as the certified ones do.
Yeah. And many, not all of those positions, but many of those positions are staff who provide not only the instructional supports, but supervise arrival and dismissal, recess, et cetera, which, is a necessary need we have in schools for safety.
And provide one-on-one support with students who have individualized education plans and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So in this last slide, wanted to highlight the blue starred item. Our principals and staff in the midst of all of this have been graciously and creatively moving staff who are present in the buildings and are in more flexible positions to fill unfilled classroom sub-vacancies. And that has relieved some of the pressure and keeps buildings running and operational. However, again, that obviously is not ideal, and it means that we're going without services and supports for students, right? So this has a dire effect on students receiving services, ELD services, special education, title, counseling services, just to name a few. And even though schools are adept and resourceful, that may paint an inaccurate picture of what schools are going through right now. When schools are open, the public may see, oh, well, they're fully operational or they're functional, they're open for students. What they don't see is the quality of education and services that staff want to provide, but that are not able to provide, and the stress that has on students and staff. Right. And so you'll see here, I've highlighted that starred blue item to just not only to thank and acknowledge, but recognize that that's happening, and as valuable and as necessary as that is right now, that is not ideal. Every day we've been looking at data in regards to absences, staff absences, and pulling staff from our district department teams. And I've highlighted there the number of people in each of the different departments who we have deployed to the buildings to provide support based on the level of need in the building, the positions that are vacated, and so forth. And so we do not, as you see, with the hundreds of absences that you saw in the data presented in previous slides, that barely addresses the need there, right? But and a few rays of sunshine is that we are soon to be engaging in building-based teacher interviews. We have had a few applicants and we'll be facilitating interviews. We haven't had as many applicants as we like, but we're going to review go through the process for the applicants we do have. And hopefully we'll be able to hire some folks who will be based in the buildings and provide supports for our classes. We've also contacted retired administrators to be able to provide supports for our principals in the buildings. We do have an absence rate for principals as well. And there are so many other responsibilities that principals are fulfilling right now, from contact tracing to supporting staff, to teaching, to cleaning the bathrooms, et cetera, all those things that really typically are not the principal's job as an instructional leader. And so we've called the few retired administrators that we have, and they're coming in and supporting as available when we see the need. Yeah. Are there any questions?
I guess I'll ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you would see if we? Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yes.
What do you think it would be if we would have already been in remote learning? Those numbers, the teacher absence numbers and the staff absent numbers.
Oh, it's a good question. It's hard to say because we still may have quite a few staff who are not feeling well and not able to teach, right? That's a difficult one to say. And we do also have staff who may be feeling slightly under the weather, but would pursue or persist and continue to teach despite that, who may not in this situation would have come to school if they had symptoms, et cetera. So I don't know. That's
okay. So say comparable with this week, last year and the year before.
I can throw a ballpark at. I'd say.
Yeah, I wasn't here, so James.
Yeah, I would just say, I would roughly guess about 50% of the staff who are not in the game could be in the game if we had remote learning, because they may be home. Realize it's not just because they're sick, it's because their kid's sick, or their kid's daycare is closed, or their kid's school is closed. And so, there's a variety of reasons why staff members out. They may be on quarantine, but symptoms are resolving, but they're in a quarantine window. So there's a variety of factors. I wouldn't say that if we went to remote, that would be the magic solution and we would have 100% of our staff, ready to go just by making that adjustment. But I would say that we would have a considerable amount more than we're having because of the fact that we're in the physical session, and people, even though they may want to come in, just simply can't come in, if that helps address the question.
I would also address from the family and student perspective, remote learning doesn't necessarily mean students would be able to access learning in the way that they would in person as well. So there are a variety of variables there. It might address some issues, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're ideally serving students in the way that we want or have the level of contact with students that we like as well. All right, thank you very much.
As we continue, basically, as I said at the outset, is we're going through our decision consider action criteria. And so Director Wright's going to speak briefly about special program considerations.
So as Tasha was speaking about staff absences and had also framed it that we've had staff shortages prior to the previous week, a couple pieces when we think about special program considerations. This would be for our students who are receiving special education, students receiving title services, students receiving English language services, and throughout the year, staffing has been an issue in many buildings. And so often our specialists are having to be in classrooms. And so that is taking services away from some students. And then we do need to consider, as James had mentioned, with many of the unfilled rates for classified staff being educational assistants who are supporting individual students, safety is something that has been a concern that we've had to monitor and continues to be a concern. And so we are, watching to see where some of those positive cases, if they're in some of our special classes, and if we're not able to provide staffing, as well as all of our buildings have a large number of students who need additional support. So when someone's texting and saying they're down a lot of people, we are trying, if we have another student services staff member, one of our consultants, if they're available and not covering for one building, that they are trying to help and support in other places as well. So that's a lot of data. And one piece I just want to highlight that sometimes I don't know that the numbers are capturing that, this is a lot for everybody. We know that families are trying to wrestle with a lot, one, trying to stay safe and healthy, thinking about how to do the best for themselves and their students. We have staff that are thinking about their students, are thinking about their colleagues, are thinking about each other, as well as administrators thinking about everyone. So I think everyone has a level of concern for each other. And again, numbers don't necessarily represent that. So as we kind of move from numbers and think about how we're trying to move our work forward, is that this just kind of represents how information is getting to our school district. And so many of us had heard or read the updated information from the Centers for Disease Control, especially when it comes to the change in quarantine timelines. And so that information came out over winter break. And so when that information came out, of course, the Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon Department of Education and the Multnomah County Public Education and Multnomah County Education Service District and ourselves have been reviewing that information. What does that mean for us? And so OHA and ODE have been collaborating, and James probably could speak even more to this, but they've been trying to collaborate on then what does that mean for schools specifically? How can we roll that out to keep schools safe still and to get students back in school sooner and staff back in schools? And so as they're trying to determine what that will look like, that information will show up in guidance from OHA. It'll also show up in updates with the Ready School Safe Learners Resiliency Framework. And then that information, Multnomah County is also digesting to think about, okay, given our context, how do we make that work here? And across Multnomah County, we're working with the MESD in partnership with the county. Then how does this look across all of our districts? Because if one district has quarantine times that are, say, the 7-day, if another district goes for 5 days, that gets incongruent across the county. And so they are trying to have agreements across the school districts and across the counties when it comes to that. And as they're settling those pieces, then that information is shared with us, and then we have to figure out how to operationalize it. But I think it's just important to see there's many places where this information's filtering through.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to rush you. I just was trying to see what the next slide was. So current actions, I just wanted to speak briefly to, and this is going to touch on a lot of what Director Wright just talked about, but what are we doing in terms of not only those consider action points, but other consultation around that. So we had meetings. When I say we, Director Southerton, Director Wright, Dr. Katsuda, and myself met with OSEA leadership and CEA leadership today to just have conversation about our current status and try to problem solve together in terms of how we move forward. We've also been in ongoing conversations with our administrators in terms of how we're operationalizing through the struggles that we've been defining here. We're having ongoing consultation with Multnomah County Public Health and MESD in terms of collaborating with the public health authorities and then amongst each other in terms of component school districts, so that we can have calibration in terms of our, if not calibration, at least awareness of what each other are doing. That leads to the ongoing consultation with area districts. And I'll speak to that a little bit. And I'm just going to turn off the slide for a minute. So you've seen in the news the various approaches that people are taking. We're not the only district. This is a PowerPoint that you're going to see in any district board meeting that you go to relative to how they're operationalizing, because everybody's in the same boat with the same struggles. The pandemic and Omicron has just kind of ripped through right now. So I offer that to say everybody's kind of handling and approaching that a little bit differently, and it's at a tipping point one way or the other with where school districts are. And so what you've seen recently is you've seen Park Rose go for district-wide remote learning until I believe the 21st of this month. And so they were going into basically a 2-week remote learning phase. Portland Public, you've seen, is has a few schools, and you're seeing them just kind of pop up here and there. And so basically the popcorn or the whack-a-mole approach in terms of where they're having the need to go to remote learning. And so really what's happening in those schools is it's kind of dipping below the threshold, kind of like you're just hovering above water, and that's kind of where we're at. And then when you kind of dip under, that's when that school needs to go down. And so basically what districts are deciding is, do we need to take a school offline because you just can't keep it safe? And then those district-wide supports that we're talking about, can we redeploy and concentrate those elsewhere rather than trying to dilute them across all of the schools, because you can't just operate at a regular, a sustainable service level that way. David Douglas just went to Thursday, Friday, I believe, of this week. And what they're doing is they're going to plan for remote instruction. They're not doing the 2 days to go into a distance learning format, but they're doing the 2 days without students to prepare for the fact that one or more or the whole district may need to transition into that format. As far as us operationally, I don't see us doing that specifically. We have a similar MOU with our license that David Douglas has, where teachers would get 2 days of preparation to prepare students for the virtual platform. That would include deploying the devices that they need. That would include getting the online virtual platforms, getting things distributed out, getting kids practiced on using them so instruction can be up and running within a couple of days. For us, if we were to go to a remote instructional format, we would want to do that in conjunction with needing to go to remote learning. We wouldn't want to do that a week or two prematurely. We'd want to do it in concert with the need to go remote. And so that's something that when I've talked with various stakeholders about, there seems to be consensus around the timing with which we would do something like that. As far as our approach, and I communicated this to the board in my Friday update, we've been doing outages all year. This isn't a new concept. We've been having classrooms go offline, particularly at the elementary school level when there's classroom quarantines. So that's something that's been happening. It's just the scale of it has gone, and you've seen the data slides, they've just gone up exponentially. So the scale of this, for example, Powell Butte currently has 3 classrooms that are out on classroom-wide quarantine. Then we start looking at, do we need to look at the entire school because of the staffing shortages being so drastic? And so that's that piece. I saw that Salem Kaiser is doing a day on Friday, and I think it's just to kind of take a breath and regroup as a district. And there's also, one of the things that I'll use, keeps me up at night, but one of the things that I really think about is, we've got Friday coming up before a 3-day weekend. We're having the staffing struggles that we're having, but then you would join a Friday on a 3-day week. That's where your mind starts going. We're barely above the surface, and now you're looking at a high frequency absence day, and that what's going to pull us under. And so I don't mean to speak drastically, but I mean to communicate in a way that you can understand kind of the feeling on the ground, and where you're hearing in the news reports about other districts slipping under. And when I say that, I mean needing to go to remote on a school-wide or a district-wide basis. So you're seeing kind of different approaches taking place. And I don't see that within Multnomah County at this point that there's going to be a consensus approach in terms of how that's being approached, because in a lot of cases, schools can be operational. And so it's just a matter of assessing, but it's that kind of hanging by your nails a little bit in terms of, what is, Tasha's viewing the absence report in the morning, because call outs don't come, they're not always pre-planned. They're often the morning of. And so is that level of call outs in the morning going to bring us under for that school? So I offer that just as a kind of an honest assessment. And then we'll also, I'd really like to defer to Principal Scott Aguirre. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but maybe you can give us a building perspective of what that's looking like at the high school level, for example.
Well, excuse me. At the building level, our teachers are doing, excuse me, a wonderful job of supporting each other and subbing for each other, but it's becoming an increasing strain. And staff members are coming down with symptoms during the course of the day. And so they're leaving during the course of the day. And that's a real scramble to cover when we were already short and there were already multiple people subbing throughout the building. I reviewed, because we had several staff members leave during the course of the day today, and I reviewed our data, and there were high numbers, higher numbers than it appeared probably when the reports were pulled. Our numbers are a little bit lower for tomorrow when I check for that, but I wouldn't be sure that it's going to maintain at that lower level, that overnight. There's a lot of people that don't want to call in for a sub because they're worried that their fellow staff members will have to cover their classes, which is a real worry, because they want their classes covered and they want to support our students, and they are supporting our students in their classes. The other thing is it really affects the amount of time they're using their prep periods to sub for other teachers. So they're not using their prep periods to grade papers, plan lessons, create new things that engage students. So it has a big effect on their overall education and their stress levels.
Thank you. And then the last 2 points that I'll note here are ongoing monitoring of key data points as previously described. We're monitoring those throughout each day and then in the evening and mornings, and then working on sustaining a staffing support team. And Tasha described how that staffing support team works. And what I'll say is, the question I keep getting is, is this sustainable? And definitely not. And so I think everybody recognizes that with what I've heard is maybe like an icicle type of curve with this particular wave. We're really hoping that it's kind of an abrupt up and down, because this is something that we can sustain and keep above water, hopefully for a couple, 3 weeks. But this is not, you're taking a large portion of your district office staff off of off job so that they can cover duties and so forth. And so that's just not a sustainable strategy longer term. So we're hoping that this kind of wanes here at a certain point. I know that we took quite a bit of time on this. I appreciate the attention of the board in this, but I think it was important for us to really give a comprehensive lay of the land, because there's a lot of decisions that the board will kind of need to help us weigh in on in terms of how we want to approach going forward. And so there is one more slide that has some really discrete decision points that the board has weighed in on previously with regard to winter formal and spectator capacity that I'll get to in a moment. But before we get to those real discrete decision points, I wanted to just kind of open it up for question and discussion amongst the board in terms of the things that we've presented and questions and comments you might have.
I'll just, if I could, I generally don't like to interrupt in the middle of your report, Superintendent Owens, but it is 8:07. That was a lot. So now might be a good time for us to take a quick 5 and just be back here in 5 minutes. It's 8:07. So, 8:13. Let's be back here. And that'll give us 5 minutes to absorb what we've learned. And then we can start our question and answer when we get back. Thanks. All right, it's 8:13, so we can go ahead and pick up there again, Superintendent Owens.
Great, thank you. And so just in reflection of what was presented, I'm opening it up for any questions or comments that folks might have with regard to the information that was presented.
Go ahead, Director Andrews.
So Superintendent Owens, I'd like some clarification because I believe I heard you say that taking a day off on Friday, in other words, just stopping this whole process would not be a good thing, but I didn't understand why.
Okay, thank you for asking for clarification. I would say that those are two topics intertwined, so I'll take them one at a time. So our agreement with our licensed association involves us providing 2 days prior to the implementation of a distance format. So if a classroom goes to remote learning, that teacher has 2 days to get ready for that. And the students have some paper packets that they do in preparation of that.
I understood that, I think, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so David Douglas's approach is going to be to take Thursday and Friday this week and just do that district-wide. Our staff, I think, would prefer us to do that individually. So if this school needs to go down, for next week, they would have Thursday and Friday as their school, but not every school is doing that. So doing a whole district-wide, everybody's got 2 days, and those 2 days are Thursday, Friday, I don't think is an appropriate move, because I think our approach needs to be more customized. As it pertains to taking a day off for a breather, that's a totally different decision point. I see merits either way on that. Yeah. So what I was saying, I don't think is a good idea is doing a district-wide MOU 2 days across the board. But does the environment need to take a breather to allow people to recover from their quarantines and get back in action? For teachers to have more time to plan and prepare and get caught up, for a variety of factors on a high frequency absence day, that may be a totally different consideration. So I'll leave it there and let you ask any follow-ups that you have.
I understand now that there were I was conflating two issues, and because I do think one of the things you may want to consider, or we may want to talk about, is there some advantage to just taking a day, especially since this is a 3-day weekend already, to possibly just break the cycle, and if not achieve that, at least give people a break.
Does anybody else want to weigh on that from the board?
I'd like to jump in.
My hand, but Keith, can you not see all of us at the same time?
No, sorry about that. If I don't call you right away and you know your hand's been up, just jump in there.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Is that okay to proceed?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Claudia's question, James, your answer to that. Notwithstanding what we have in, contracts and MOUs, I haven't heard about just closing the schools for 2 weeks and then adding 2 weeks to the end of the school year. Is anyone looking at that, or everybody just trying to do this thing about that, as you mentioned, kind of working above water? Because we know that the implications of that are dramatic as it relates to our parents trying to find childcare, in particular for our elementary school children. But if we had a lot of snow on the ground and we couldn't get to the buildings, we would be adding days. Should we just be shutting this sucker down? I don't know. I just haven't heard that being discussed.
Do you want me to weigh in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do.
Okay, I didn't know if that was for the board or for me to weigh in on. So considerations with that. I feel like I've heard one district, and I can't say who, I just feel like I've heard it because there's just so much information in the last few days, say something about whatever the time is that they're taking out, they'll add to the end of the year. So I have heard that, but I can't cite where it is. there's also something to be said, and we've experienced this in our work together over the last few years, to having integrity to the school year calendar for a variety of reasons. Attendance in those last few days, people being ready to go out, pre-planned vacations, and things of that sort. We had our year with 10 snow days a few years ago. We had our tech outage last year. In both of those circumstances, we had requested from the state a waiver of instructional time requirements. And so that's, another approach that the board can consider in terms of how to approach that. It just kind of depends on whether you want to, where you value the integrity to the school year calendar versus adding those school days to the end of the year. And, we can debate that, but I just kind of wanted to give you the options on that. As far as it pertains to individual school levels and instructional time, it varies per level how much instructional time buffer there is as per state requirements. So at the elementary level, there may be 7 or 8 days of buffer, and that's where you have inclement weather days and you can absorb that. As you increase up the levels into middle and high school, that time becomes closer to the quick. And so where you see it most acutely is high school seniors. And Principal Scott Aguirre can talk to kind of instructional time around what she's looking at in the high school.
Sorry. Right. I haven't looked at the time. I mean, normally we have about 4 days. I haven't looked in relation to adding on for this year or changing this year, but we have about 4 days. I mean, and we had that at the beginning of this year, and we haven't had to use a snow day yet. So that's about where our buffer is. It ranges between like 3.5 and 4.25 days before we'd be in trouble with instructional time.
Thanks.
Director Shields, did that answer your question?
It did, and in light of this coming Friday as a possible discussion and a decision point, I think one of the things that we maybe want to also talk about is we know we have those days and we may be cutting it right to the bone. But if we're going to try to weather this might be the time to go ahead and use those days. And I would like to know what the impact of that may be. And obviously that's a discussion of the district office and the cabinet to weigh in and then explain to us what those choices, the impact of those choices down the line, but maybe not tonight, but maybe in our next meeting, especially as we see how this virus is going to continue to impact our schools and our families.
Thanks for that. Director Lynn, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair Curry. Yeah, the numbers are, staggering that you gave us tonight. And it seems like all those little steps on that mitigation chart are just falling off in terms of keeping everybody safe. And that's really what we got to keep in mind, is keeping everybody safe. I would love to hear from the students. We haven't had a student update in a little bit, and not just kind of what they're thinking about winter formal or something like that, but how they're feeling in terms of their safety and COVID. I would love to hear what the site councils are saying and what you're hearing in the site councils in terms of what their safety they're saying. I hope you have a very quick trigger with any kind of these reset days. Go ahead and use them. If we, again, this is all like safety. If we don't have people in the classrooms, kids are not safe. No accountability measures are being done. If we can't have principals filling in for janitors and expecting not everything else to just start cascading down the line. So please be quick with the resets. Go ahead and use them. And again, if we are not going to take a district-wide kind of shutdown thing, again, I hope you're quick with the schools. If any of these schools start reaching this thresholds or an outbreak or something like that, I hope we can move quickly to close that down and move to remote learning, just to, again, keep people safe, which is what we got to keep in mind.
Thanks for that, Director Lynn. Any other board members want to weigh in?
I just want to take a minute to thank all of the principals and the staff and everybody who is showing up, because it's really hard to just keep showing up. And thank you for your integrity and your time.
Absolutely. Second that. Vice Chair Fuller, was that your hand up?
That was just me agreeing with Director Slosky. I think that I'm still kind of like in shock with all the information that's been coming at me and different things like that. So sorry for me not speaking and being more spoken about this. But yeah, this is a lot. And I hope that we just continue to keep our students and our staff's health and safety in mind when making these decisions, even if it is to add more days on. I want to make sure that we're keeping our staff's health in mind for that as well too, because just because it's being pushed down longer, kicking the can down the road, doesn't mean that it's going to be helpful for those that we're going to end up needing towards the end. When we have the end of the year. So yeah, I just wanted to have that 2 bits.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Vice Chair Fuller. Looking around for any other board members that have your hands up. Director Harden.
Yes, just to kind of play the other side of the coin here. I mean, it's the numbers are really staggering, and safety is of the utmost importance for the district. But I do want to present that, you know, our society around us, our community around us is not in a lockdown. It's not by canceling the district or closing the schools for a set period of time doesn't mean folks will stay at home. It does not guarantee that. You know, we are coming out of a 2-week vacation and these numbers have spiked. So I don't know that if we need to make an adjustment because of staffing concerns and because people aren't safe at school, because we don't have enough people to take care, to actually be the teachers or the, you know, just people in the room to keep the kids safe, then that is one thing. But I don't think we should assume that by closing down the schools that our community is going to stay at home and act in a safe COVID manner.
I think that's an excellent point, Director Harden. I think Superintendent Owens, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, James, that's what he was getting to in trying to present this as 2 buckets. You know, we have an operational bucket and then we have a public health bucket. And it sounds, from what I got out of that, Superintendent Owens, it's more the operational bucket is what we're facing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would agree. And I would say you and I had a similar conversation yesterday insofar as, and I said pretty much basically exactly what I heard you say, Director Harden, having more time to hope that the virus dissipates because people aren't congregate in the school. I think that might be a fantasy, that's going to dissipate the virus, and that's going to be a solution. Because exactly, we just came out of a 2-week break and this happened. So it isn't as if we had a 4-day weekend and it magically disappears. I don't think that. I'm not a public health expert, but I don't see that happening. It's the operational component, as Chair Curry kind of pointed out, those 2 buckets. I agree.
Any other board members want to weigh in here?
Director Andrews.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it seems to me, especially after what Principal Scott Aguirre was saying, is that we're just really treading on a tightrope and very easily could tip off the side. And that's what concerns me, because parents have shown during snow days that they do not like it when we send kids home in the middle of the day. That is very difficult. And when you said, Principal Scott Aguirre, that you had 3 staff that left in the middle of the day today, I mean, to me, that's like, oh my gosh, should we consider sending kids home then? Because there aren't enough. I mean, where is the tipping point? And it sounds to me like we're so close, and shouldn't we be a little more proactive? That's kind of those are the questions that run through my mind.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in here since I'm the last one to speak here. I agree with Director Andrews. I think, and Superintendent Owens, this is more of an operational issue. And so, as Principal Scott Aguirre had said, you know, the operational struggles are exactly as Director Andrews pointed out. You've got staff leaving in the middle of the day. So I'm on board for Director Andrews' suggestion of giving a day, maybe some breathing room. As Superintendent Owen said, maybe that'll help with the buffer zone. We're going into a holiday weekend for those that are on quarantine. So it answers sort of the public health aspect of that, but also so teachers can maybe just catch their breath. Administrators can catch their breath. Principals can take a break from cleaning the bathrooms, maybe. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me at all. Does the rest of the board want to weigh in on that? I'd like to get a consensus on that so the administration can make a decision sooner rather than later.
Can I speak to that?
Go ahead.
Sorry. I want to offer a way forward as it pertains to that, because there's kind of two ways that you can address having a school closure. One would be like your snow day type of scenario where the superintendent is just making the operational call that there's going to be a snow day. Obviously an unprecedented wore out 2 years ago, but we're in an unprecedented situation where you'd be calling a school closure just because you operationally can't do it, which kind of puts us in a whole new dynamic. Another way to approach it would be having the board have some sort of proposal to convert school calendar day as a student contact day and convert it to like an in-service day. And so that would be a school calendar decision where you kind of have two elements here. You can have a district operations, or you can have a board decision as it pertains to how the calendar is adjusted, because that's a board action, if that makes sense. So I'll offer those as pass forward, Chair Curry, as you're having that deliberation as board.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Rest of the board want to weigh in on that, or which avenue we'd like to take, if any? I saw a hand up here and flipping through. Go ahead, Director Shields.
Just a question about, we get no warning for snow days, sort of. I mean, we get a little warning by the weather report. And so if we are going to deliberate on a change of the calendar and we're looking at it as a staff day, do we stay the course of the rest of this week and have a staff development day on Tuesday, rather than trying to throw something on us for tomorrow, right? And having parents try to figure out something to do on Friday. Again, these are cabinet types of directions that we need help making that decision. But I wanted to think about Tuesday as the add rather than Friday as the reaction.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Anybody else? Does Superintendent Owens, you want to weigh in on that one? It's Tuesday rather than Friday?
Claudia, did you want to, you had your hand.
Just wanted to say that it seems like we're so close to the edge right now of tipping over. It seems like sooner rather than later would be helpful, but that really is up to the administration and staff, I think.
I want to call on Dr. Katsuda as far as any absence trends that she's seeing for Friday.
Thank you. I was just going to ask to speak. We do have some information in regards to staff we're expecting to be out due to quarantine, isolation, et cetera, and illnesses and so forth. Some schools are, their staff absence rate is pretty high on Friday. We have one school, at least a third of their staff will be out. And that's one of, and there are 3 schools in a similar position. So something to consider.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that puts us back to what James was saying. Do we want to make this a board decision where we sort of convert the calendar, or do we want to make this a snow day type situation where we're just making a call? Yeah, I mean, I guess given the short amount of time we have to consider this, and I do feel like we need to come up with a consensus tonight. I'm in agreement with Director Andrews. I really feel like, given the data that Dr. Katsuda has shown us, just reiterated with forecast for absences on Friday, to me, it feels like Friday might be of more help. I know it puts a strain on parents. It's Wednesday night. It's not like we're giving no notice. They got a little notice, but I think it'll serve some good. Anybody else want to weigh in there?
I agree. I really do feel like we need to be proactive on this, and knowing and hearing those high numbers that are going to be happening, that are projected for Friday. I think it would just do us a world of good if we called it quits for the week and then revamp and figure out and see how we're going to do fix this next week. So
yeah, I think the fatigue that people are feeling from the school, the teachers, the students, I do think that it's the right move.
Are you referring to Friday, Director
I
Slosky?
am, yes, Friday.
All right. Director Shields, did you want to add in anything there?
Director Harden had his hand up before I did.
Okay, Director Harden.
I just want to say, for, staffing and, for just a breather, I've been, kind of cheering for this for a long time. But I do also feel it's just going to punt the problem down the road. I don't see coming back on Tuesday. Like, I just don't see the numbers dropping that fast. People are going to be out and about. It's going to be a nice weekend. I don't see the decline in numbers happening, but maybe that's just me being a Debbie Downer on the whole situation.
I don't think it was necessarily to see a decline in numbers as it was to give a mental break for everybody that's been working and pushing through this so hard.
exactly.
Yeah, I think we're approaching a safety issue, is my understanding of the information I've seen tonight. If we're already have massive staff absences that are requiring district office to disseminate staff from there to cover, we're already looking at individuals. We got 3 classrooms out at elementary schools. Now we're approaching a Friday where we have a forecasted high staff call out rate. We have to remember that you need staff, you need bodies in the school to protect children, not just to instruct them, to make sure that they're getting where they need to go if we're talking about elementary, middle school. So I think this is more of a safety decision. We're seeing a train coming down the tracks, and we're trying to just sidestep this particular train. That's how I see it. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Go ahead, Director Lynn.
Shields first.
Oh.
Go ahead. I'm good.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, I sure hope, like everyone's saying, it's not as a health issue as it's gonna be, and the numbers will jump down. But I also know that we're all dealing with our, community members and family members, who either think a booster is a shield or they've reached the, screw it stage. And while it might be okay for them to take those decisions, I don't think it's okay for us as a board to take as leaders to take those kind of decisions. We need to take the strongest decisions to protect people. I really support Friday. And again, I hope these numbers do start to go down. But it seems like it's because of COVID, and I hope people start taking it seriously and don't just take it as a day to go out and go to the movies or, go be with around as many people as they can find.
Director Shields?
No issue with the Friday, but after we've had this kind of a discussion, I think superintendent and cabinet get a feel for where, we continue to prioritize safety for our students. And as you've said, the staffing is a part of that safety equation. So although Superintendent Owens, you mentioned that we don't have any one factor that is the tipping point. What I am hearing is staffing is a big part of that. And I would like to know, maybe by the next board meeting, if there is something you would need us to have from the board to be able to make the call without having to call us together to make the call. If you know where we are, what we've stood for and are continuing to stand for. Do you have enough to make the call for this Friday? Yes, it sounds like the board is behind that. But what do you also need to have ability to make a similar type of call when we're not all in this same room, Zoom room together. I'd really like you to help you feel comfortable in making those kinds of decisions when you see a need for it without having to try to bring us all back in the room. Thank you.
Superintendent Owens?
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I would say in terms of how we process this, I don't necessarily see it as an either or. I think with the board support, we don't necessarily have to convene the board to do a calendar change. We might even do that retroactively. But if the will of the board is for the administration to be assessing these factors and then to be making these calls as it deems appropriate, given the board's support, then I think to me that seems sufficient to be able to operationalize what your guidance is.
So let's wrap this up one item at a time. So definitely by my count, I think we had a 5 or 6 board member consensus on Friday. So let's get that. What is the most expeditious way to do this, Superintendent Owens?
I would suggest that somebody bring forward a board action to convert Friday, January 14th from a student contact day to a staff in-service day, and get a second on that discussion and vote.
I motion to, sorry, you said that really fast and I was
to convert Friday from a
student contact day.
Student contact day to a
staff in
service day.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Excellent. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of converting Friday the 14th from a student contact day to a student or a teacher in-service day, say aye. Show me those hands so I can count.
Aye.
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 Excellent. For the board secretary, that looks like a unanimous 7 votes from the board. Excellent. And so to the second question there as to empowering the superintendent and the cabinet to make some decisions without having to call on the board. Let's just quickly run through this. I'll just go down and get everybody's weight in on that so we're all comfortable doing that. Personally, I think that's a great idea. Director Shields has the right idea there. Director Lynn.
Yeah. Yes.
Excellent. Director Shields, it was your suggestion, so I'm going to skip you. Director Slawski.
Yes.
Director Andrews.
Yes.
Director Harden.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
Perfect. Vice Chair Fuller.
Yes.
All right. I think there's your consensus, Superintendent Owens, when it comes to this kind of decision making where we need to move quickly and make these decisions. You have the will of the board behind any decision you make.
Thank you. Appreciated. And then the last part of this was to look at some of the discrete decision points that the board has weighed in on previously in light of the changing factors with COVID. So I'll go ahead and present those. I had provided those in my Friday update in terms of what the board would be taking a look at. And specifically, I'll outline them here as soon as it pops up, which are spectator guidelines and Werner Formal. And I've proposed some possible options. They don't need to be the only options, but possible options for the board to weigh in on. So for the spectator guidelines, can be a complete pause on spectators for athletics and performing arts. Keep in mind that OHA and ODE's advisory the Monday after winter break advised for a pause altogether on extracurriculars. I'm unaware of any district who's actually implemented that for a variety of reasons, but as it pertains to spectators in particular, do we look at a complete pause on spectators for the current, or do we do what some other districts around us have done? Now, mind you, we've gone up from 100 spectators to 300. Perhaps we look at paring that down to allowing 2 to 4 spectators per athlete. And then you see a sub bullet there. Does the board want to consider a vaccine card or negative test within 72 hours, as well as a 50 student spectator per competing school? So some different customizations there in terms of what that might look like. And I don't know, Chair Kerr, if you want me to kind of narrow that down to a recommendation, or if that is enough for the board to chew on.
I personally think that's enough to chew on. Anybody else want to weigh in there? Or would you like Superintendent Owens to narrow this down to a specific recommendation that we can approve or decline?
Do we have any input from the high school where most of this occurs?
Principal Scott Aguirre, can you weigh in?
Yes, we're in favor of, generally in favor of decreasing the number of spectators during this period of time. There's the 2 to 4 spectators per athlete is what the majority, not all the other schools in the league are doing. What they're allowing is 4 spectators per athlete for the home team and 2 spectators per athlete for the away team, which is a pretty simple way. They have to share the names of the spectators on a Google Sheet by noon the day of the game, and that's all they're allowing in. I don't believe anyone in our conference is doing the vaccination card or negative test within 72 hours. I believe Portland Public is doing that. Central Catholic is doing the 50 student spectators per competing school. And I think that they have a specific number of spectators also, like parents for athletes, but they're keeping their student sections. So those are the different things that we're seeing in the league. I don't think Sandy has limits, and Reynolds doesn't have a very small limit on number of spectators, but I believe Gresham, Barlow, and many other competing schools are doing the 2 to 4 spectators per athlete.
Thank you.
Let's open this up to the board real quick. I'm gonna go down the list. And so what we're asking here is what the board has a preference for, either any one of these or possibly all of these. We'll start with Director Harden.
I think for this current surge, we should absolutely pause any spectators and possibly even pause the extracurriculars. I think we got to get through this surge, and having more people in communal events is not going to help us. And when we are done with the pause on the spectators, I feel we should implement the vaccination card or negative test.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Director Shields.
I would be in favor of the 2 to 4 spectators as was previously talked about how it's being done in other districts, along with the vaccination card and negative test.
Excellent. Director Andrews.
I don't feel strongly about it, other than I do believe that there needs to be some curtailment.
Excellent. And Vice Chair Fuller.
I agree with Director Harden. I believe we should pause everything until we can get this under control. A lot of it that it's facing is students that are in low income housing and stuff. And also, that also means that it's sadly also a lot of people are affected are my people. So people like are brown and Black. And I have a strong concern about letting just us doing these things while we're in a deep surge like this. So I agree with Director Harden.
Thanks for that, Vice Chair Fuller. Director Slawski.
I think that at this time, a complete pause on spectators makes sense. I don't want to see, I'd hate to see pause on athletics or extracurriculars in general. I feel like the impact that has, as long as it's shown that it's not, that we're not having huge outbreaks because of it. And I do also, with the vaccination card or negative test, I think that the question, I think that would make sense if it was easy for people to get tests, because the people that aren't going to be able to go are the low income families who can't afford or can't get tests if they're not vaccinated. So.
All right, thanks for that. Director Lynn.
Yeah, I am loath to cancel the extracurriculars, although I agree with Directors Harden and Fuller. If there needs to be a pause, I hope it's as brief as possible, but I hope it's something that's meaningful in terms of preventing any kind of spread. And then I hope we have kind of a phased back into normal or close to normal, where we maybe think about not visiting spectators, or no spectators, then no visiting spectators, then, gradually opening things back up. In terms of the negative tests and the vaccination cards, it is very hard when everything is so behind on the testing to try to require that. But I think that still might need to be something we consider, because whatever we can do to keep the extracurriculars going is better than nothing. So.
Great. Thanks for that, Director Lynn. Yeah, and I'm on board with the pausing spectators. I think that's probably the most effective way, given the numbers we've seen and where the district is. Does that help out, Superintendent Owens?
It does. So what I've heard is pause spectators for now, and then have the district come up with a plan for phasing spectators back in, possibly looking at some of the metric considerations to help. And then I can share that with the board in a weekly update, perhaps. And if it needs to come back to the board, we can. Otherwise, we can share it with the board and see if you have any issues with what we've come up with.
That sounds good.
The next one is winter formal. I know that the board has looked at this proposal twice, and I know that there was support for having the winter formal. I believe it is coming up shortly here at the first part of February. Is that right, Mari?
That's correct. It's currently scheduled for February 5th, but they're also well aware that that's a worry right now.
Yep. So interested in the board's input because there was previous board involvement in allowing for this.
All right, Director Shields.
Voting it without a date.
You want to say that one more time? I didn't catch the full.
Postpone it, but don't give it a date. Just if they want to have it, let them have it when it's safe, but let's not use the March 2022 because we don't know what March 2022 is going to be like. So postpone and then let the students figure out what that next date might be based on the metrics.
Thanks for that. Director Slawski.
I think that postponing it is the right call here.
All right. Vice Chair Fuller.
I agree. Postponing it is the right call.
Director Harden.
Yes, postpone. I don't want to outright cancel it on those kids.
Awesome. Director Lynn.
I had a question. Do we know, I know probably the first bullet point is out, but do we know if they had a preference between the second or third preferences, and whether they might just want to do number 3 and then start scheduling a spring formal or something like that?
That would be looking to the postponing, because we've often had our prom in April. It's currently scheduled for May. Who knows what that's going to look like, but I don't, with the amount of lead time they need to do a dance in order to get DJs and photographers and various other things, they need a decent amount of lead time. So they were okay with transitioning to Plan B, the photos of students in formal attire, but I'm not sure even that's up to you to decide if that's a good idea still on February 5th. It would be one, group of students at a time getting photos, but that's, they are okay with that one if that's what we have to do.
Director Andrews.
Yeah. Oh,
sorry, Director Lynn, did you have another question?
Oh, not another question. I was just going to say, I hate to postpone it indefinitely. I would love for them to still be able to start planning for March in terms of postponing it with another revisiting, by the board here in another couple, meetings to see how things are going. But I hate to postpone it indefinitely on them to make it seem like it might not happen.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that. Director Andrews.
Yeah, it's either postpone or transition. This is an issue that doesn't seem to me really needs to be coming to the board. That's why when Director Lynn said talk about it in another couple of meetings, it's like, wait. You all can take the right decision. I'll support whatever you decide to do.
Yeah, I'll second Director Andrews' feelings on that. I think the board has probably visited this enough. You know our feelings on it. It sounds like for sure, and I'll weigh in here. I agree with postponing as well. From here on out, if Superintendent Owens, if you and your cabinet can handle this one, I don't think it needs to come back to the board unless there's some major change in the way we're doing things.
Perfect. We can take it from here. Thank you. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Excellent.
I have one quick question.
Okay.
Just confirming that the wrestling tournament got canceled and we're not sending kids overnight to that, or is that still happening?
The wrestling team proactively canceled their own attendance at the tournament. I don't know if the tournament is even still happening, but we're not going. Mari, that's correct, right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been weighing on my mind.
Awesome. All right, that brings us to item 2 under reports, 6th grade to middle school in Oliver conversion report from Dr. Katsuda. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. Yep, I have sharing options here. Okay. As I provide information, if you have questions, please speak up. I think I can't see all the screens here, so I'm hoping someone can let me know if there's a question. So I'm gonna, can you see the screen, the main screen? Thumbs up? Excellent. All right, so I'm happy to provide an update on the Oliver Middle School transition, building on the overview that was distributed to the board and the staff in November via the narrated slideshow. I'll incorporate a bit of review to establish contextual understanding for any community members who may be watching this live stream. All right, the transition that Centennials engaged in this year are significant and impact every school, staff across the district, students, and families. With the challenge of change in mind, it's important to verify the purpose of this transition and to sustain focus on the why to ensure our approaches and actions get us to that goal. Centennial's grade level structure of 7 K-6 schools and 1 middle school has presented a number of enrollment challenges impacting equity and access and the overall experience for students in our district. For example, a number of elementary schools are over full, limiting options for programming that will benefit students and families like pre-K programs, hands-on CTE instruction, family welcome centers, and more. Enrollment bubbles at the elementary and middle school level are difficult to fix with schools at enrollment capacity. And another example is culture building, relationships, and sustaining programs in a middle school with 2 grades can be challenging with all students transitioning in or out of that school every year. So through the boundary revision process of moving 6th grade to the middle school level and establishing 2 middle schools, the district will be able to focus physical space on the developmental needs of our students, as well as develop programs and services, all with the goal of increasing equity, access, and engagement of our students and families. This may look like a review slide for some of you who watched the slideshow in November. This overview of changes was shared again, and I'll share it again for the sake of any viewing public audience. I'll briefly touch upon this visual representation of the grades in schools impacted by the district plan. Transitions will involve distributing rising kindergartners through fifth graders from Oliver Elementary to our other elementary schools, and moving all rising sixth graders to the new Oliver and Centennial Middle School. These grade level transitions will happen simultaneously with district boundary adjustments, which could result in significant changes for our students and families, as well as staff. Staffing across the district will be impacted in significant ways. For example, Oliver's K-5 teaching positions will be distributed to other elementary schools. Sixth grade teaching positions will be moved to both middle school, Centennial Middle School and the new Oliver. Depending on licensure, elementary or middle school teachers may decide to move school levels. High school teachers who are endorsed and see that we have vacancies and position possibilities may be interested in teaching at the other levels as well. Middle school, and if they're endorsed at the elementary school. While the district is preparing for these logistical and physical shifts, we are collaboratively developing middle level programming through 3 representative work teams that are presented here in this slide. First is the middle level planning team, which consists of representatives from the Oliver planning team, which is assembling soon, and the existing Centennial Middle School leadership team. The purpose of this team is to develop an aligned district-wide vision for middle level students' outcome and programming components that support those outcomes. And all of this is in alignment with the Destination 2023 strategic plan. This work ensures, the work of this group ensures that all students between both middle schools are receiving aligned foundational instructional programming and services with research and best practices regarding adolescent development and supports equity, inclusion, and access. Right? The other team you see listed here is the Centennial Middle School Planning Team, which actually is their current leadership team, being an already existing middle school. They will continue their school improvement work they've been engaged in this year and meeting during their regularly scheduled time. But within that meeting, they will be aligning their improvement plan and actions to the vision and program planning as developed by the middle level planning team. The last team you see listed here is the Oliver planning team. I just want to recognize Jeb Hubbs, who's the Oliver planning principal. He facilitated an information session last week with staff from across the district who expressed interest in serving on the Oliver planning team. That meeting was met with high levels of interest and enthusiasm and will result in a district-wide representative team scheduled to meet during the times you see listed here on the slide. The work of this team will involve supporting middle-level vision, as well as programming and further developing the structures and systems for Oliver Middle School. Are there any questions on the planning team structures? No? All right, hearing none, I'll move forward. Just a couple more slides. The staffing process and timeline are dependent on a number of factors and variables. First of all, the boundary review process that the board is very well informed of, and personnel timelines and processes within the current collective bargaining agreement. We have conducted a preliminary forecast of enrollment. That is very preliminary, obviously, because we have not concluded our boundary review process. That will follow, and we'll follow the annual district processes this year for determining which staff are returning from leave, with district transfer process to follow. And district transfer requests are due as per the collective bargaining agreement on March 1st. A few other processes will be running simultaneously with the processes I've just outlined. All schools across the district will be engaged in their own annual building level staffing processes. And the Oliver K-5 staff will engage in a hire or transfer process, and we will staff Oliver Middle School And we have the first of likely several meetings this Friday with CEA leadership to collaborate on the staffing, the nuances and details of the staffing processes that we hope to engage in to make that happen. All right. The planning and coordination of communication is definitely a team effort between cabinet members and principals. And I wanted to highlight an example of a document that we look at collectively to coordinate communication across the district. I'll just show you the first part of it. And so we have 3 kinds of communication that we look at and plan on one document just to ensure there's some alignment in messaging and the coordination of that messaging. And so you see here planning around community communication, staff communication, and direct principal communication to their staff via email or their weekly memos. And we've, this is a sample of what had happened in November. And typically this involves multiple meetings, hopefully multiple people in the same room, but often multiple meetings across principals and cabinet member groups to coordinate. And the perspective on how we message and facilitate messaging to our stakeholders very much requires multiple perspectives, which is why we involve the folks that we involve. And Chief Swenson really does a lot of work around leading the efforts around communication district-wide, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's see here. All right. Part of the plan, as you see reflected here, is to provide staff with regular, frequent communication through the principal memos, FAQs that are set up for staff to submit questions to via a Google form, the superintendent's update as well. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, district staff were also provided with a narrated and also a non-recorded information slides and handouts, and had an opportunity to view that recording in staff meetings. And I've linked the recordings on this slide as we so that you have a chance to view it for foundational context later if you so want, and we'll share these slides with you. We administered one all-staff survey in November to query for staff interest in possible positions that may be available throughout these processes. The response rate to the survey was pretty high. We had over 93% of the staff respond, and most of the respondents were at the elementary and middle level. Another staff survey regarding position preferences is under development, and we're estimating, or the goal is to get that out to staff by February to inform our decisions and processes as we move forward and in planning with CEA. We've also held 2 individual school sessions, one for Meadow, one for Park Lane, recently last week and yesterday. And we're scheduled to facilitate sessions at the remaining elementary and middle schools between now and February 11th. And in those sessions, I've actually enjoyed those. I shouldn't say actually, I've enjoyed those sessions. They've turned into a two-way conversation around the concerns that staff have, but also the ideas that staff have to help us facilitate this transition across the district. So it's been very informative to our processes. And it's become a venue for us to be able to provide more detailed information to staff that they're hungry for. Staff have a lot of questions around the nuances of the various staffing situations for themselves and for their colleagues. And so it's a great opportunity for us to provide that on a very personalized level. So under the leadership of Chief Communications Officer Swenson, we've provided information about the transitions to our living and district community and connected it to the critical work of the Boundary Review Committee. Are there any questions on that? No? All right. So this calendar overview focuses on staffing, the boundary review, and communication to our families. What I've called in the past are just 3 streams of work involved in facilitating this transition. Our goal is to coordinate all the moving parts and all the complex processes so families have the needed information and support and can prepare their student for next year, and that staff have the information and support so they can prepare as well. Our ultimate goal is to establish our district structures and systems that support meaningful and powerful growth and learning for our students. Are there any questions?
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back to that previous slide with the communication, just the last slide
Yeah.
you shared with us?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Here we go.
My question is, when you talked about communication updates, student and family school tours. So are we talking to the fifth graders? Do they know this is coming? That they're not staying at their school and they're going to a middle school next year?
We are providing or disseminating communication in chunks, and some of it went out in the superintendent's update and was connected to the boundary review process. And we will continue to do that on a regular basis. But you bring up a great point. I think we are intending to engage in much more explicit communication with the families who are directly impacted. Yes. Yeah. And I probably should have, go ahead, James.
Oh, I was just going to add that we'll be having informational sessions as we normally do with incoming sixth graders to seventh grade, but we'll expand that to incoming fifth and sixth graders because they'll have to both get the information.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes. That there is also, in conjunction with what he has shared, we know this year our ability to provide physical tours may be limited. So I know there's some talk amongst the principal groups around how they're going to share about their schools for all the families who are going to be new to their school. So we very well may be planning physical tours just in case we can have them and structuring them in a safe way. But there's talk about a lot of virtual information to be shared. And actually, Chief Communications Officer Swenson and I were talking today around some ongoing planning sessions for coordinated communication to families through the website and other means as well. Yeah, thank you for that question.
I had a question.
Yes.
I'm very concerned about the students who are doing that are potentially doing three transitions. They just moved from an elementary into seventh grade. Now they might get kicked over to Oliver for eighth grade, and then they're going to get kicked for the high school for another grade. So they're just transitioning school to school to school. What possible preferences and options can we give families who maybe we can poll them or find out which families might want to stay at CMS, even though they're in the new Oliver district, just because they don't want their kids doing that transition.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's a great question. We were just talking about it today. You want to take that, James?
Yeah, I'll take that because that's our next report to the board. So right after this one, we're going to get exactly into that topic of the board's wishes as far as how we proceed with exactly that question.
All right. Well, unless there are other questions, thank you for your time. And also, we'll be providing regular updates to the board along the way so that you could provide input and we share what's happening and you could support the community in being informed about this transition or these transitions. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for that, Dr. Katsuda. I will remind the board about the time. It's about 9:15. We do have a policy that doesn't allow us to go past 10, and we are roughly not even halfway through the agenda. So any questions that you can follow up with via email, a phone call, that sort of thing, I always encourage you guys to reach out to the cabinet and the superintendent to do those. I don't want to squash your fire here, but we do have to be cognizant of time. Superintendent Owens, I believe the next is up for you.
Yep. So the next is the comprehensive boundary review transition plan consideration. So as was referenced in the superintendent's report, we have the boundary recommendation that will be coming to the board shortly. So end of February. I was asked at the last board meeting, once we had Kent from Flow Analytics here, to prepare for the board rather than just a verbal articulation of the various options, an actual sequence that the board can consider. The outcome that I'm hoping for here, and perhaps the board has other outcomes as well, but the outcome I'm hoping for is to get some direction from the board in terms of where you would like the administration to pursue further in terms of viable options for consideration in terms of just what Director Lynn asked about in terms of different transition considerations. In my Friday update to the board, I gave a chart that had basically decision point, considerations, pros and cons, and it asked the board to pre-read that in advance. I've taken the information and basically am presenting it in a different way. I've put it into a PowerPoint, and I'll run through just kind of in a linear sequence the considerations. I want to make sure to be expeditious and also do the diligence to make sure the board has proper time to consider. So I'll try to strike that balance as we go through. So as we look at this, here, we're looking at transition plan to accompany the boundaries themselves. One of the questions in the last presentation were, what are the activities that we're doing to prepare for students for their new school? You know, how are we going to go about that? We'll flesh this out further and have more information to come, but that's going to be what a large chunk of our spring is spent doing, is taking a comprehensive approach to how we're preparing students, because it will be a lot of students. There are a lot of changes happening between the attendance boundaries and then also with the middle school transition. So here's a sampling, it's not exhaustive, but CMS and Oliver Middle School principals presenting to current 5th and 6th grade students and families, like I had shared with Director Shields in the last portion. Families impacted by the boundary change will be notified and supported. Resources will be developed for each elementary school and middle school, introducing students and families to that school. I know Chief Swenson has some ideas about what that might look like. There may be a consistent format in terms of an introductory video that's produced for each school so that families can at least get that sort of an orientation. Chief Swenson, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yes, you know, I just think about even this year, we have not had visitors in our buildings. And so for some of our parents that might be new to the district, or their child is new to the school, they haven't had a chance to see the school. When we think about for students that might be changing schools or going to a school for the first time, there's just a power in visually seeing inside a school, both for an incoming student, but also for our parents. And also our schools are great schools. And we also, so there is just that piece too, that we have an opportunity to show off our schools. We have an opportunity to take our students and parents inside the school. And so thinking around having a nice welcome video to just kind of set the stage, and kind of a feel-good video might be a nice touch as we make this transition. That's not the only thing, but so that's just one piece of it. So also just having some kind of a profile of each school, of what kind of the vision, what's the mascot, what's the pride points, what are the goals. And so that's something that Tosh and I have been talking about, and then just we're getting principal input on that. That's a big key in this too, is making sure that we're getting our principals' voices in that, and our staff voices in that. So that's what we're up to. So
great, thanks. And then the last bullet point is just a sampling of overall, you know, there's all of the behind the scenes that needs to take place to do a school conversion. And so one of those is our tech department supporting the enrollment and registration updates to reflect the attendance areas for the 22-23 school year, so back-end processes. As we look at the consideration points, I want to make sure to put front and center the equity lens for the district. I'll just read through these, and as we go through, just things to keep in mind as we think about different decision points and how we might proceed with those. So number one, who are the racial and ethnic and underserved groups affected by the decision, and what are the potential impacts on those groups? Does the decision being made ignore or worsen existing disparities or produce other unintended consequences? How does the decision advance district priorities? So there's that balance of there's priorities that we have as a district and how is the decision moving that forward? Have you intentionally involved stakeholders who are also members of the communities affected by the decision to help validate 1, 2, and 3? What are the barriers for more equitable outcomes? It could be mandates, political, financial, operational, and so forth. And how will you mitigate the negative impacts and address barriers defined above? This equity lens could be its own presentation of its own. And so I want to make sure to do it justice and also keep us moving along. So if there's any questions on this, feel free. Otherwise, I'll move us forward. So what I'm going to break down is you're going to see here a summary of options for elementary and a summary of options for middle school. So what you'll see is there will be a slide for each decision point here. Basically, the decision points, and this is every permutation we could think of. Maybe there's more. Maybe you'll come up with one that we didn't think of. But on the basic, allowing students to stay at their school through the highest grade, allowing students to stay at their school for one more year, allowing incoming fifth graders to stay. So maybe you've been at your school all along and you want to stay for that one last year, or the intra-district transfer process, which is the normal process that we have if students want or families want to request to go from one school to the next. Summary of options for middle school. All 8th graders remain at CMS. That's one option that was talked about, is just having all 8th graders there. 8th grade students opting into Oliver. So maybe the baseline is all 8th graders remaining at CMS, and then they opt into Oliver if they really want to go to that school. Or again, this should say intra-district transfer process. So first we'll start with the elementary ones that I had talked about. And I just put this in a different format, considerations, pros and cons. And so I'll just kind of walk through with you each of these. So allowing students to stay through the highest grade. Are we going to provide transportation? If we do, how long? Will younger kids be able to attend that school as long as there's a sibling at that school? So there's a lot of nuance to it. The pros for having students stay through the highest grade, perhaps after school care, you have to change that if you go to a new school and there's a new bus route. Less disruption to families because they're not having to make a change. The cons, and we can talk through these cons, and we've talked through them quite a bit in our administrative group, are operational challenges, staffing challenges, enrollment balancing, equity issues, and we can unpack those further if the board would like. And I might call on Director Southerton as our Director of Operations to outline maybe some of the key operational perspectives. And one thing I meant to say at the outset is, as we're working through, I always try to think of what's the basic thing we're talking about here. To me, the basic thing is, are we ripping the Band-Aid off or not? You know, are we going to make the transition, or are we going to stagger in that transition? And if so, to what degree? So I'll let Director Southerton weigh in here in terms of different components for us to consider.
Thank you, Superintendent Owens. The operational challenges, there's some things that will be top of mind and maybe obvious. Transportation, if we're providing transportation to folks that are currently spread throughout the district to one middle school, like CMS, that's one thing. If we're now going across the district, all four corners, and bringing them to two different middle schools, now we've increased the number of buses that we need and the time that it takes to get kids to school. So maybe there's bell schedule changes that need to happen to make sure we can do it with the same amount of staff that we have now. Or maybe there's budgetary considerations that we need to add more drivers, more buses. That gets into the more storage and places to keep buses secure. Other operational challenges might be more subtle or not intuitive. If everybody needs to opt in to 8th grade at Oliver, how many teachers do we start with? If there's no 8th grade class and everybody by default is at CMS, what class are they opting into at Oliver? We don't have an 8th grade teacher because we don't have any 8th grade students. When are those decisions made? When do we let staff know so that we can transfer them? Those are one of many considerations. So it's the sooner we can make a decision, the better, so that we can support our staff and support our students.
Great, thank you. So you'll see some repeat as we go through in terms of some of the cons. They kind of are similar as you see those, but additional operational challenges are just elongating the transition, bell changes that Director Southerton talked about. Delaying our staffing process can be an issue as well. Allowing students to stay for 1 year. Wrinkles within that. Do we provide transportation if we do that? If so, for how long? Pros and cons are very similar here. After school care, less disruption to families, but then you have the operational components that remain on the cons list. Allow just fifth graders to stay. That could be school continuity for fifth graders, the after school and disruption to families components, but then you have those same operational components, staffing, waiting to distribute staffing, class size issues that might arise, and equity issues. And you'll see equity issues pop up on these, and it's a matter of, are we providing transportation or not? If we're providing transportation, then you've got an operational challenge of providing the transportation, the buses, and the staffing that goes with it. If you're not providing the transportation, then you have an equity issue because only students whose parents can access their ability to drive them to that school can do it. Otherwise, if you don't have that access to a person that can take you to the school, you don't have that opportunity. So that would be an equity issue that we would be outlining there. The intra-district transfer process is, and we've talked with Flow Analytics, and they've said that this is the most common option that districts choose, and it's just basically using your normal intra-district transfer process. Considerations, wrinkles there are, how do you consider those requests? Do you do a lottery? Do you prioritize certain students? For example, I got an email this last week from a fourth grade parent who's moving to fifth grade. Child has an IEP. The question is, can that student stay at that school for that last year? And so in an intra-district transfer process, if we put considerations such as if a student has an IEP, that could be a consideration factor that we would incorporate into the decision-making process. You'll see from the administration's perspective, we see more of a balance of pros and cons with this approach of factoring in the building capacity, which is one of the primary components of why we're doing the boundary review process in the first place. Accomplishing the school staffing sooner because we know we can roll up projections the day after the board makes the decision as to which students are going to be attending which school, and then you're using an existing process. The cons in this case, at least as we've developed them, are not every student will get the choice because it's a defined number based on staffing. You know, this class size is at 22. We can accommodate 3 more kids to get to 25. Therefore, at fifth grade at this school, we'll allow 3, that kind of thing. It may compete against the goal of balancing enrollment, but all of the other options kind of do that as well. And then if we decide to provide transportation on intra-district, which we don't normally do, but if that's something we wanted to do, then it would be the transportation, staffing, and operational considerations there. So that's just kind of a quick run through of these, and I'll kind of recap them at the end, but those were the 4 options we looked at. We'll jump to middle school. So the 3 options that are 8th graders remaining at CMS, 8th graders opting into Oliver, and again, I did this late last night, intra-district transfer process is what that should say. So as you look at 8th graders remaining at CMS, consideration points, because I know that there's some pros and cons on this one that you might want to narrow in on. Will younger siblings be allowed to attend their current school? So let's say there's a 7th grade sibling. The capacity of the school, you know, I'd bold that and put a couple of asterisks or whatever to call attention to that. CMS school capacity is a consideration point for sure there. And then you have the Oliver impacts, as Director Southerton pointed out, of not having 8th grade teachers involved in the opening and culture creation of the first year of the school, because we're not having 8th grade at Oliver. So they're not a part of the acculturation process of establishing the school. That would be a downfall. Pros would be less disruption to families for the reason that Director Lynn pointed out of changing schools from 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. So the continuity for students and students getting to stay with their friends being versus split apart for the 8th grade year. You've got all of the operational challenges that we talked about before, the staffing challenges of just kind of waiting a little bit longer to do that, class size issues potentially, but more of the enrollment balancing, because you would make a pretty sizable, you would have one of the largest middle schools in the state. Equity issues, and then disappointed families. We have seen on the boundary survey excitement about Oliver Middle School and students attending there. And so if we had everybody's attending CMS, then on the flip side of that, you might have some disappointment of families that might like that smaller school because of the overall capacity of Oliver is just smaller. So there's some the merits to that as well. And then I would just say, kind of on middle school's tough as it is for kids, just in general. And I would say, you know, no knock on anything, but just the pandemic may be the one of the primary reasons the middle school level is hard this year. You've got 2 grade levels of kids who were out of school basically for a couple of years doing remote instruction. And so the culture building in a 2 grade level school has been difficult, and they've had some issues in developing that culture that they wouldn't normally have if they were just in a normal setting. So the thought of expanding the size of that school next year personally gives me a little pause. And I just wanted to offer that piece. 8th grade students opting into Oliver. I won't go through the list of pros and cons, but what I'll say on that one is a lot of what we just saw before, but you'd really have to know who's opting in before you could see if that was a viable solution, because you'd have to, what if 3 kids opt in? What am I going to have a language arts, math, social studies, and science teacher and PE and all of the other stuff? Like, I don't even know how you do that. So it's an option. I wanted to provide it, but I'm just saying that their viability would have to be explored further. And then the intra-district transfer process, and you'll see the pros and cons are just kind of the same as you saw last time. So all of that said, I've kind of breezed through this, but since we just went through middle school, I want to have a pause point here and then let the board weigh in as far as, hey, what looks good here? What do we want to explore further? What are our thoughts? So I'll stop talking and allow Chair Curry to engage the board.
Yeah, so we'll just go down the list here. Director Andrews.
No, sorry, I wasn't quite prepared for unmuting. Very quickly, so the Oliver Elementary School students all have to change school, correct?
That's correct. And that's one of the equity considerations that we've thought about as well, is that you're providing some students some option, but some students no option because they're being forced into a change.
Exactly. So there is quite a lot of advantage to the rip the Band-Aid off and just do the intra-district transfer process. That's my input.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Director Lynn.
Yeah, kind of with the elementary and kind of in general, I do kind of usually favor the kind of rip the Band-Aid off, kind of the school is your school and you should go there. Again, it's just this bouncing from grade to grade to grade that concerns me. And I would love to see, and I'm not sure if this is semantics at this point, but like a opt out maybe happen as soon as possible so that you can actually, tell people they're going to be going to Oliver, and then try to gauge what the interest is in opting out, and then see if we need to go to a intra-district transfer because there's just too many opting out. But I would certainly like to hope that we are going to build a robust 8th grade at Oliver, even with some families with enough families being able to, have their choice.
Thanks. And then as we talk about those, I don't know if this is too nuanced, but I'm also interested in knowing if you're thinking about an option that allows a return for students, whether you think transportation would be something that you would want to pursue the district providing. I know that presents operational challenges, but we also, want to take that input as well.
Great, yeah, and in terms of the transfer process, or the transportation, I'm only interested in that in terms of equity issues, the families, low-income families that need it. For the families who do not, no, we shouldn't provide it for them. That's what my decision would be.
Thank you.
Awesome. Director Harden.
There's a lot of layers to this, a lot involved. I think the intra-district transfer process would be the way to go. The people that really want to move or stay can, fill out the form and make it happen. With that process, I would say we should have a more flexibility with the number of students, maybe an earlier deadline to get that information, but have more flexibility so it's not with the number of kids because of the number of changes coming.
Awesome. And for transportation, what are your thoughts on that?
Transportation, I think we would have to see how many kids we need to move where. I think we would solve that issue once we knew where everyone wanted to go. And if there was a segment that we couldn't run kids from Butler Creek to Oliver, or from this corner of the district to that corner of the district, then we would reach out to that community and say, we can transfer you. We're happy to have your student at the school, but because of the distance and transportation challenges, we're unable to transport your student to and from school. But I think we need to see where everyone wants to go first.
Awesome. Vice Chair Fuller.
I'm for the inter-district transfer process as well too. But I actually was in the rush when we were talking about transportation, so I don't know much about that.
I think at this point it's a pretty open forum. What was the concern about transportation is it's, if you've got kids who are requesting intra-district transfers, traditionally we don't transport them.
Okay.
So if we're gonna do that, how long do we do it for? Do we do it for everybody? And if we don't do it, we have an equity issue with students who do not have the option of having parents drop them off. So those are your options. Did I sum that up right, James?
Well done.
Awesome. Okay. That is a concern. I guess I have to think more on that. Kind of,
yeah, that's valid. I mean, you can always reach out to Superintendent Owens with your thoughts on that as well. So,
okay.
or Director Southerton.
Thank you.
If you need more time with it.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, excellent. Director Slawski.
I agree with the intra-district transfer. I think that transitions happen all the time in life, and whatever we can do to prepare youth and families to go through a positive transition and show them that there can be positive transitions, I think it's beneficial. I think it also lets the district show confidence in all of the schools that the youth will attend. And in regards to transportation, I think it's hard. I think it would be hard to say, well, we'll provide transportation for the families who need it, but not, I think it would be really hard to pick and choose who we decided to offer that to. So I think that just as Director Harden's comment about getting that information to see how many people are we needing to move can really then impact how big of a deal that's going to be.
Excellent. And Director Shields.
I support the intra-district transfer process. I would not support even giving the inkling that we'd be able to provide transportation. The history here with transportation, the number of buses we have, the inability to find qualified bus drivers, et cetera, could be setting us up for disappointment, even with the data that Director Harden is talking about. This would be a privilege to have an opportunity to even apply for a transfer process. And in doing so, you're going to have to take on the responsibility of working out a process for getting your child or children to the middle school. Just because we've had so many issues with transportation before, unless this board's willing to start looking at more buses, more routes, and impact on our budget.
Excellent. Thanks for that. My thinking is also the intra-district transfer sounds like the best option. I am of a like mind with Director Shields. Intra-district transfers are offered as a privilege. It's very clear. It's always been the policy that you're going to have to provide your own transportation. I think if we're upfront with our families who are potentially going to need that, I think that'll help them make the decision, but we need to be upfront with them and say, hey, if you choose the intra-district transfer and transportation is traditionally a problem for you, this may not be the best option for you.
Thank you. So I don't necessarily, unless the board wants to engage in this set of options, I think they're very similar to what we just talked about. And it seems like from what I heard, I don't know that there needs to be another round of input on it. And I think based on what I've heard here, what I'll do is I will provide this PowerPoint in my weekly update and then also formulate this input into the boundary review recommendation that you receive at the end of February.
I'm okay with that. Anybody have any objections? Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for that, Superintendent Owens. I believe we're moving on to the OSEA report. And I believe Christina Dowell's going to kick that off for us. Is she in the gallery and can be promoted to panelist?
I'm looking for her.
Sure.
Chris Dow. Yep. And there she is.
Hi, thank you. As you can imagine, when I was talking to our members about what I should share tonight, and staffing was the biggest concern, I would say, overall, one of the biggest questions is, do we know exactly what our bare minimum operation costs are? Staff is. And I think that concern comes mostly from when we run as short-staffed as we have been running, it's our most vulnerable students who are most impacted. I really appreciate the conversations that we had earlier today in terms of really recognizing the fatigue that we had and the sharing of the data that was shared. And I think that at the end of the day, our members need real numbers clearly stated, especially for our secretaries. Every day they have students in their health rooms that are sick. They're placing whole classrooms on quarantine. And when they question what the plan is, we're just told that we're following protocols. Truly, people understand that protocols and systems are in place. But by the time we get those documents, they're so wordy and people don't have enough time to process it, causing more anxiety because they don't understand. So just as our students need multiple means of communication, I think that when we're disseminating this information to our staff, we need to also be included in that multiple means of communication. And then finally, we want to take a moment to recognize the members of the board. The work you do is so important, and the fact that you do this as volunteers is truly honorable. So thank you for your commitment to our community. In recognition of all that you do, the Centennial OSEA will be making a donation for the Food for Families in recognition of your service. The amount to be determined at our next chapter meeting. Thank you again. And I appreciate the conversation around Friday specifically.
Awesome, Chris. Thanks so much for that. And I look forward to you guys getting together with the cabinet and the administration and ironing some of this out. And thanks for the Food for Families donation. That is awesome. My kids have always volunteered there. And so I think that's awesome. Thanks so much for that. All right, looks like we're moving on to item 5 under reports. That is our CEA report. Is Alicia with us?
Yes, she is. And I
Awesome.
will promote her.
Hello. I'll make this quick since I know we're running pretty short on time right now. I want to echo what Chris was mentioning about the hard work that the board is doing, and I really do appreciate the discussion that you guys had about, you know, the absences and staffing shortages and how, you know, the impact that it's having on our staff and our students, and everybody in our buildings. You know, it's something that I think was mentioned earlier. It's not sustainable, and it's not something that's going to magically go away. You know, like we've gotten ourselves, you know, education is in this predicament right now, and it's taken years for us to get here, and it's going to take us years to get out of this hole. So, you know, I just encourage us to look at, you know, the future also, because it's not like we're going to start school next fall and have everything magically like go back to how it used to be. So, you know, some long-term things, looking at long-term issues would be very, very, very helpful. Very appreciative about turning the Friday into a staff work day. I think that will give, you know, we've been asking for more planning time, and so that'll give folks a little bit of relief. You know, although it'll be helpful for the staff that are planning on being there on Friday. But as you know, heard that there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to be absent already, so they're not able to take advantage of that for whatever various reason that they're out. And so I encourage us to look towards other days that might in the calendar that might be in the same predicament. You know, we have President's Day coming up. You know, it's another 3-day weekend. We have Memorial Day. You know, we have the day before spring break. You know, like there's a lot of days that are coming up that we could be in the same predicament. And so being more proactive and giving staff and parents a little bit more of a heads up than just like 2 days would probably be a good idea. You know, and maybe take a look at making some of those, you know, using some of our 4 cushion days as just giving staff a day off and it's a snow day. You know, so, you know, because I'm on one hand, yes, planning is very important and we need that planning time. And also on the other hand, sometimes we just need a break and not do any planning on that day. And then also for this Friday, I mean, I don't know exactly how it's going to be structured, but, you know, I encourage that it just be 100% staff directed time. You know, that teachers, you know, we're giving this in-service day to give teachers a break, and adding meetings or professional development into that, you know, would be something that would take away from that really important planning time that I know a lot of teachers need. So, so thank you for taking all that into consideration. And, you know, it was a great discussion tonight. Thank you guys for just recognizing what we're all going through right now.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. We really appreciate it, and glad we can help out. And we'll work with James and the cabinet on some future planning if that's in the cards, and we'll do the best we can. Thank you for holding up in there. All right, let's move on to confirmation items. We have 3 items in here. I'm assuming the board has had a chance to review all of this. So what we'll do is we'll need a motion to confirm these items in mass.
I move that we confirm all the confirmation items in mass.
Second. Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Would anybody like to discuss this? Hearing no requests for discussion, all those in favor of confirming confirmation items in mass, say aye. Show of hands.
Aye.
Aye, excellent. For the board secretary, I believe that was a unanimous vote in favor of confirming. Go ahead.
Can you tell me who seconded there? Was that Pam Shields?
No, I believe that was Vice Chair Fuller that seconded the motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we are moving down to board action items, old business. We have a second read on policy ACB that I believe Superintendent Owens and Director Wright will kick us off.
Thank you. So ACB is the every student belongs policy. And that board note should read every student belongs, not all students belong. But essentially, this is a second read. there was concern the previous time about having particular language that was scratched out as it pertains to what a symbol of hate consists of. And so what we've done on the policy itself is add back the information, the language that was scratched out previously, to be more expansive as it was previously. So I know that that was a concern that was raised by Director Harden and then also Director Lynn. Director Lynn had proposed some language, but when we vetted that through OSBA's policy expert, policy specialist, and then subsequently through OSBA's legal counsel, they said, if you want to have a more expansive language, it would be in your best interest to just add the previous language back. And so that's what you see in the blue writing. Other than that, the policy and AR are as they were previously presented. So with that, I recommend the board approve policy ACB, every student belongs.
Go ahead, Director Shields.
So that I'm clear, the blue stays, the highlighted stays.
The highlighted is what the legislature changed this year and added. So the highlighted is added language that OSBA incorporated based on the legislative updates.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I move we adopt the policy.
A second.
Excellent. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote to approve policy ACB. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. I believe that was a unanimous vote for the board secretary. If it wasn't, let whoever dissented speak up. All right. Excellent. Moving on to item 7.2, budget committee vacancy. Director Southington.
Great. Thank you, Chair Curry. So you may recall that the board appointed Felicia Brewer to the budget committee at the November meeting. You may further recall that at that time we had only one vacancy, but two well-qualified candidates, Felicia Brewer and Teresa Mai. Recently, a long-term budget committee member, Jerry Ray, informed us that he was moving out of the district and no longer able to serve in his role as budget committee member for position 5. Teresa Mai has generously offered again to serve on the budget committee, complete the application, and we had no other applicants for the positions. You may recall that Teresa is a former Centennial student, is an Aspire or has been an Aspire mentor for Metro East Web Academy, has been a past Smart Literacy volunteer at Powell Butte Elementary, and is a current OSU student. As Teresa was previously interviewed by the full board at the November meeting, the administration respectfully recommends the board consider moving forward with a motion to vote to appoint Teresa Mai to position 5 of the Centennial Budget Committee. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and Teresa is in the attendance in the gallery if we'd like to promote her.
Yeah, we can go ahead and take, is the board comfortable moving forward with go ahead and appointing her? She's already been interviewed.
Yeah.
I'd make the motion to appoint Teresa Mai to the budget committee.
Second.
1 second here. I saw Director Shields.
Was it for the duration of Mr. Ray's term? Is that correct?
That has been our past practice. It's the duration of Jerry Ray's term, and
Thank you.
then we could re-up or renew after that.
Thank you.
All right. There was a motion there, Director Lynn.
Yeah, although just a quick comment, I just hope that more future vacancies can be disseminated in the community in a little more wider way. And I think we also, I heard at a previous meeting, had a policy of automatically re-upping people if they're still interested. And I hope we can revisit that discussion in policy.
All right. So did you make the motion to approve?
I did, and I believe Erica seconded it.
Yeah, she did.
All Right, and I need to check my notes here. I've been doing several things at once. So Teresa, we have a motion and a second to approve Teresa May's appointment to the Budget Committee vacancy. Need to ask for any discussion. I am seeing none. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor of approving Teresa May for this vacancy, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, for the board secretary, by my count, that was a unanimous vote by the board. All right, excellent. Moving on to new business. It is 9:53. I do not see us getting through all of this. So we may need a motion to either extend the meeting or postpone some of these items to a new meeting. Does anybody?
And I motion that we move number 4 to number 1, policy BDDH, public participation in board meetings, to be concluded within 15 minutes of our deadline. So if we have to go a little bit over 10 o'clock, we could do so and then move other items to the next meeting.
Excellent. I think that's
timely, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. Do we have a second to move item 724 to the first spot?
Second.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second to move policy BDDH to the top spot under new business. Oh, well, hey, we have Director Slawski has her hand up.
I was just getting ready for I, but.
Oh, okay. Well, discussion comes next. So any discussion, I always have to ask.
I think Chair Shields also moved that we extend the meeting until 10:15 if necessary. So is that part of the same motion?
We will make that part of the same motion. All those in, we have a motion and a second, just to be clear, to move BDDH and to extend the meeting to 10:15 if necessary.
And to punt the other 3 agenda items to the next meeting.
Yep, but we got it. Thanks for
All
clarifying.
3 of those things. Okay.
Sorry, that's what happens when I try to multitask and try to keep track of who's talking at the same time.
Plus it's getting late.
Yep. All right, so just to be clear, we are moving BDDH to the top spot under new items. We are extending the meeting to 10:15 and we are moving the other 3 items under new business to the next meeting. We still have a motion and a second for that. Open it for discussion so we're clear.
Who moved and seconded?
I believe the motion was moved by Director Shields and seconded by Vice Chair Fuller, I think.
Yep.
Thank you.
You got it. Hearing no need for discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Believe that was a unanimous vote. Correct me if I'm wrong. So next up, we will deal with policy BDDH. Superintendent Owens.
Great, thank you. So for whatever reason, the board note that companies didn't make it with the transition. This was originally in the confirmation items and we decided to move it to the new business section. There was an initial read on this one on the December 8th board meeting. But my recollection is that given the time, we just didn't give it due diligence in terms of attention. And so there was interest to have this back into basically a first read format. And then there's a couple other things that I just want to point out here. So House Bill 2560 went into effect January 1st, requiring districts to provide the same opportunity for public comment to those attending virtually as is provided to those attending in person. So unless I'm mistaken, and anybody correct me if you would, but this policy, while it went into effect January 1st, the applicability of this policy really takes effect when we go back into a physical session, because it really is about providing the same level of access to people participating virtually as those in the in-person format. So I offer that to say, while we didn't get this done by January 1st, it really just needs to be done by the time we get into in-person session to make sure that we're providing affording the opportunities for those who want to participate if they're doing that remotely. Another thing is just a policy nuance here that I want to point out, and I'll just share my screen here in terms of, and Chair Curry and I interacted about this earlier in terms of how these policies are presented, and this is just a structural component, is OSBA does this on track changes. They moved from doing the strike through to track changes a couple of years ago. So when you see a board policy boilerplate from OSBA, what you get is, if you're in Microsoft Word and you do track changes, you get all that comment stuff off to the side. It's really hard to read. So what I've done with these is gone in what I think the OSBA should be doing when they present them to us, but I've gone in and done the strike throughs, basically adding the language back into the policy so that you can see where it was struck out, so that you can get an idea of how the policy changed. So what you see here as it pertains to the policy is the wording that is regular is words that were there before. The wording that is crossed out is words that were there before and now are struck through. The wording that's highlighted, as was presented in the previous policy that Director Shields pointed out, is new language. So I just want you to have a basic understanding of the presentation style. And I'll just go ahead and offer this to the board, because really, while I'm presenting this policy, it really has to do with how the board is operating. And so I want to turn it over to the board for consideration of this policy and basically treat it as a first read. So you're not taking a motion on it, but you're just discussing.
All right, thanks for that, Superintendent Owens. I think most of you kind of got the gist of what my feelings were on this. You know, the SB 2560 was to address accessibility. Like Superintendent Owens said, we are in compliance with that as so long as we're in Zoom. That OSBA took the time to do what amounts to essentially a gut job of this policy. I'm not sure why, because it has nothing, the language in here that was struck has nothing to do with SB 2560. So I think I just want to throw that out there, and I will start down the list in reverse order. Director Shields.
Thank you. The challenge is the when I went back and reread the House bill, there's all these ifs. If you allow. So it does imply that if we allow oral testimony or comment during our meetings when we're together, that we're going to have to do something similar in the virtual environment. And the reason why I was concerned about it, and I apologize for forgetting that we covered it, because I hadn't had the chance, I guess, to think it through, is that our administrative regulation, which is our procedural process, normally that's just something that you kind of, to attach to it. If this policy goes through the way it's written now, our administrative reg is going to have to be really thought through procedurally as it relates to how our boardroom and what we have opted into, which I don't know all about, which is like the YouTube channel and all these kinds of things, how that's going to have an impact. So as long as we're staying virtually, I would really like us to be able to talk that AR through, as well as understand what it would look like if we were to adopt the policy as is and the administrative reg. What does that do to our staff who are having to monitor and bringing people in who are coming in remotely? So that was my concern. It just needs more work, in my opinion.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Director Shields. Director Slawski.
I'm still trying to figure it all out, and I yield my time to the rest of the board so I may listen to their wisdom.
Awesome. Vice Chair Fuller.
Yes, I'm looking at it too. I think we need more time to flesh some things out. I'm not sure that I agree with some of the stuff that's being striked out.
All right, excellent. Director Harden.
Yes, I think we definitely need more time. I did not agree with a couple things. Overall, it doesn't feel very inclusive to public comment. The part that I had the biggest problem was comment only on agenda items. I don't agree with that. I think the public, if they want to comment to us, should be able to comment about anything that is Centennial School District related. I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Director Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to strike that good balance in terms of having as much robust community involvement and participation as possible while still having all the tools we need to shut down people who are just here to disrupt or cause a problem or start speaking inappropriately. And of course, we have to be cognizant of time, because even when there's like little discussion and little disagreement, we still run up against our time limits here. So as long as we can balance those things, I'm usually in favor of as much public comment as possible.
Awesome. Director Andrews.
I'm fine with taking some extra time to do a more thorough scrub, and perhaps there's a group of people who want to be more engaged and I could, based on comments tonight, it seems like there's 2 or 3 of you who are interested in getting more involved in this policy.
Awesome. So I'll jump in here. I'll answer Director Lynn's question the best I can, in that part of what was being struck was the board chair's discretion about time limits. So there's just a lot in here, and I don't want to cover it all now because of time. But essentially, from my reading of this, what's being struck is essentially the board's discretion when it comes to public comments, as well as the chair's discretion. Just for instance, petitions was struck entirely, which means if we have students who would like to petition the board for any number of things, this policy as it's being proposed to us limits that. They're not able to do that. So, and I get why OSBA sort of went this route. We all have seen the news, boards and chairs across the state struggling with how to conduct public meetings. And I think that was probably the impetus behind that. But for our district, we don't have that many struggles with that. So I think all of this red is probably overkill for us and needs a little closer look. As for getting it done, that was one of the items we were going to talk about. We'll get into it next meeting. But yeah, we can get a group together, no more than 3 board members, and sit down with Superintendent Owens and whatever cabinet members. I think I sent, just to be clear, and Superintendent Owens, back me up here unless I get something wrong. The way this process goes, these come down from OSBA. James gets them. They're disseminated out to cabinet members based on content and the cabinet members area that is part of the policy that they're dealing with. And they look them over, make recommendations. James and I typically look at them at the leadership meeting, make any adjustments that we might find, and then they get presented to the board. That's roughly the process. Is that correct, James?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that we ideally do a cabinet check so that the director of the cabinet is presenting it to other directors to make sure their policies are congruent amongst the different departments.
So I think somewhere in there, we can definitely get, this happens to be my area of education. My master's is in public policy. So I love this stuff. And anybody else that wants to jump in and sit down and geek out on this stuff with me, I'm happy to get together and we'll schedule something with the superintendent. Any takers?
I'll jump in, let me know.
All right.
Appreciate reading it well ahead of time. So maybe, I know we get our stuff out early, which is great, but this one might need a little bit more chewing time. Right. And so if we could just have this separately, looked at, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is we would tackle this one separate, since that, it's not secret. Essentially, I was thinking of forming a committee to deal, because we have up almost 50 new policies coming down from OSBA. So the current way we do things is going to get real ugly real fast, because we can't spend 3 hours in board meetings wordsmithing this. So there's got to be some other way to do that. And so we'll discuss that next meeting about what everybody's ideas are. It doesn't have to be a committee. I just thought that might be the best way. So everybody start brainstorming of how you want to tackle these almost 50 policies coming down, so that the board, policy work is board work.
Yeah.
How they get implemented, that's a different story. Making sure they're congruent with administration's existing policies, that is administration. But as far as how they measure up to the board's goals, our vision for the district, that's board work. So we do need to figure out a way that we can weigh in on these with the administration, and then it gets presented to the board, and then we can vote, and we're not stuck here trying to wordsmith stuff at 10 o'clock at night. So put on your thinking caps. In the meantime, I'll reach out to board members and see if we can't get together a less than a quorum to deal with this specific policy. And then it'll be presented to us again with our changes, and we'll take a vote then. And again, if it's not, we'll have communication with the board. I would like to rotate in board members and keep it at that 3-person, so that once we do present it to the board, it's not like half the board has seen it and then the other half hasn't. That is going to get us right back to where we are tonight. So that's kind of my plan. And anybody has any better ideas, please shoot them to me.
Maybe added as an agenda, not an agenda, I meant maybe a topic in board coffees as well. We're not a quorum, but we would be able to at least be able to have our superintendent have a feel of where all of us would be when the others who are wordsmithing it more would have that feedback.
That's a great idea. Absolutely. All right, so I think we've all come to a consensus on this one. We'll tackle this one alone, and then we'll come to a better idea of how we're going to handle the rest. Future agenda items, anybody? It's 10:09.
I have 2.
Awesome.
We have collective bargaining that is coming up with the the teacher union. Many of the board members here have not gone through any bargaining training, what it looks like, how long it takes, all those kind of things, styles of bargaining, etc. So I'd love to have that added as an agenda item, but it's possibly an executive session item, not maybe for a general board meeting. So that's something for Superintendent Owens and Chair Curry to discuss. And then my second one is that when the bond failed in 2016, we had to look very carefully at our policies as it related to lots of things that related to budgets. And one of the things that we passed was a policy to establish a reserve fund that we have been funding through property sales primarily. 2016, there was a big concern and press for our athletic facilities, and in particular our football field, turf field. And one of the things after the 2016 fail, we had the long range facility plan, and that came up as again something that the community, especially our athletic community, wanted to see, and yet it didn't perk well. I don't know what the word is there, but it didn't come out on the bond as a positive thing for voters necessarily. Really positive for a group of our community members. So what we looked at was, what could we do after securing the bond? And we did. We secured the bond. That's there. We have made the board policy that we have. I think we're close, if not already there, for the fund balance. And if that's the case, then it's time for us to start talking about those facility needs. And we're right here with the Ideal Athletic Committee program that our athletic director is chairing. We are just about ready to start budget discussions. And so I'd really like to have an opportunity to discuss with the board, maybe some of that historical piece that I've just quickly went over, any more detail that would be needed to share, and then start that discussion about what we could do, whether it looks like a fundraising where we could put up amount, a 50-50 situation, whatever we could be doing to get this moving forward. We are, I believe, one of the, and Director Harden, you can help me. I think we're one of the last, if maybe the only one that still has a grass field, and this has been.
We are the only one in East County, I believe.
It's been a stumbling block for our athletics community, and it's time for us to have the discussion because so many of us are new.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody else have future agenda items? Got 3 minutes. All right, I will work with Superintendent Owens, Director Shields, to get those 2 items on some future agendas for sure.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no future agenda items, thanks everyone for the vote to extend. I appreciate that, and we are adjourned. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care, everyone.
Not everybody.